Chapter 279. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. Malicious wounding in an official martial arts competition would be dealt with according to military regulations, especially when Gu Chongqing was a commandant. What would the soldiers think if a commandant took the lead in doing such a thing? This was the most irrational Gu Chongqing had ever been. At least, that was what the old duke thought. However, the old duke couldn't reprimand Gu Chongqing in front of outsiders. He gave Gu Chongqing a dark look and said, "Come down now." Gu Chongqing slowly walked to the wall and pulled out the scabbard that was deeply embedded in it. Tang Yueshan followed his movements and saw this scene. He couldn't help but frown. He was only in his early 20s, but he already had such profound martial arts. After Gu Chongqing took the scabbard, everyone thought that he would obediently leave with the old duke. Something strange happened at this moment. Tang Yueshan had just helped Tang Ming, who was covered in blood, sit up and was about to carry him down when a sharp sword light flashed. Everything had happened so quickly that no one could see what had happened clearly. The unconscious Tang Ming was woken up by the pain. Accompanied by his agonizing cry, one of his arms flew off. Blood splattered on Tang Yueshan's face. Tang Yueshan was stunned. In the next second, Tang Yueshan came to his senses and hit Gu Chongqing with his palm. The vigorous internal energy was so substantial that it was hard to resist. It sent Gu Chongqing flying out of the arena. This scene simply stunned everyone. Even the Marquis did not expect his own grandson to do such a thing. Marquis Xianping raised his eyebrows. "Oh, your grandson has guts." The old duke glared at Marquis Xianping. Tang Ming wailed incessantly. Tang Yueshan went berserk. He hit Tang Ming's acupoints and flew toward Gu Chongqing with bloodshot eyes. He wanted to kill Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing had already fallen to the ground after being struck by the palm. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The old duke's expression changed. He quickly stepped in front of Gu Chongqing and raised his hand to block Tang Yueshan's attack. Tang Yueshan's palm strike was full of murderous intent. The old Marquis was forced to take a few steps back, and his breath was in a mess. It was not hard to imagine how serious the consequences would be if Gu Chongqing was hit. Tang Yueshan was enraged. How dare he do this in front of me? If I don't kill him today, I won't be able to vent my anger. Get out of my way. Otherwise, I'll kill you too. Of course, the old duke knew that Tang Yueshan was not trying to scare him. Tang Yueshan had no children, and Tang Ming was his only nephew. Tang Ming was the apple of his eye since he was young. He was no different from his own son. Right now, one of Tang Ming's arms had been crippled by Gu Chongqing right in front of him. How could he possibly take this lying down? Marquis Xianping slowly opened his mouth. "Lord Tang, this is the military camp. It's not good for you to kill someone here, is it?" Yes, Gu Chongqing had violated military discipline. However, if Tang Yueshan killed Gu Chongqing, then he would be in the same situation as Gu Chongqing. He had just been conferred the title of Supreme Marshal of the military forces. Many eyes were on him. He could use his authority to bend the law for personal gain, but he could not kill a Marquis' heir in public. Tang Yueshan clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He looked murderously at Gu Chongqing and said through gritted teeth, "Men, take Commandant Gu to the torture chamber. I'll judge him personally later." "Yes, sir." 2 guards took away Gu Chongqing's sword and took him to the torture chamber in the camp. Tang Yueshan left with the unconscious Tang Ming. When he brushed shoulders with the old Marquis, he said coldly, "He hurt Ming. I won't let him off." The old Marquis cupped his hands in salute. "I won't let anyone wrong my grandson either." He was telling Tang Yueshan that he could forget about tampering with the interrogation process. After Tang Yueshan left, the old Marquis turned to look at Marquis Xianping. He no longer had an official position and could not interfere with military matters. Marquis Xianping waved his hand. "I know. I'll be there during the interrogation. However, you'd better find out if Commandant Gu has any difficulties." The old Marquis replied, "I will." After a while, Marquis Xianping also left. The old Marquis thought for a moment, then turned and went to the torture chamber. The torture chamber in the military camp was not really a prison. It was more like a dark room. There was nothing inside except for a straw mat. Marquis Xianping greeted the guards of the torture chamber and allowed them to visit Gu Chongqing. The old Marquis successfully entered the torture chamber. Tang Ming was a proud son of heaven in the military camp. Wasn't Gu Chongqing the same? He was even more outstanding than Tang Ming, more law-abiding and more respectable. But today, this person who had never made a mistake had actually been convicted and locked up in the torture chamber. The old Marquis's feelings were very complicated. "Kneel," the old Marquis said. Gu Chongqing lifted the hem of his robe and knelt down expressionlessly. Gu Chongqing had always been like this. He had never had a warm personality. But for some reason, the old Marquis felt that after returning to the capital, there was an invisible barrier and distance between him and Gu Chongqing. Even kneeling seemed to give off a sense of obedience, but in reality, there was a silent rebellion. The old Marquis frowned. His suspicious gaze swept up and down Gu Chongqing's body. In the end, he still asked about the military camp. "Why were you so impulsive? Who gave you the courage to harm Tang Ming in front of so many people? Just now, if Marquis Xianping and I hadn't stopped you, you would have been killed by Tang Yueshan." Gu Chongqing didn't say anything. He only lowered his eyes, as if he was looking at the cold ground, or as if his eyes were empty. "Tell me honestly, what was the reason? Did Tang Ming really mistreat the former Gu army?" This was the grandson the old Marquis had raised single-handedly. The old Marquis knew what kind of character he had. Gu Chongqing had an inseparable feeling for the Gu army. Even if he had never truly been in the Gu army, he had been influenced by what he saw and heard from a young age. He had long since considered himself and the Gu army as one. The old Marquis still remembered that when he had handed over military power and allowed the Gu army to fall into the hands of others, Gu Chongqing had secretly wiped away tears in his room. At the time, Gu Chongqing had only been a youth. When he had entered the Tiger Mountain barracks, the old Marquis had repeatedly warned him not to act on impulse. These past few years, Gu Chongqing had always strictly adhered to his warnings. But today he couldn't bear it anymore. Other people believed it, but the old Marquis didn't. There had to be another reason. The old Marquis asked again, "Do you have a personal grudge with Tang Ming?" Gu Chongqing remained silent. The old Marquis became angry. He unbuckled the whip at his waist and unfurled it with a crack. The long tail of the whip, suffused with a cold light, fell to the ground, as if it could splash sparks. "Your wings have hardened. You don't have any respect for your grandfather, do you? I'm asking you a question." Gu Chongqing said indifferently, "Grandfather, just take it that I have a personal grudge." What kind of words were these? What did he mean by "just take it that I have a personal grudge"? The old Marquis gritted his teeth. "Then tell me, what kind of personal grudge is it?" Tang Ming didn't have a good reputation in the barracks. But as to how bad his reputation was, and what kind of despicable things he had done, most people didn't know. Gu Chongqing wouldn't say. When it came to Gu Yan's reputation, he wouldn't say a single word. The old Marquis was furious. "You can't say it? Then you don't care about your actions, and have no regard for military discipline. Do you believe that I won't punish you?" With one lash, Gu Chongqing's skin split open and his flesh lacerated. The old Marquis' gaze was like a knife. "Do you know your wrongs?" Gu Chongqing's expression was indifferent. "I don't know." The old Marquis lashed out again, directly causing Gu Chongqing's old wound to bleed. "Grandfather." "Big brother." It was Gu Chengfeng and Gu Chenglin. Gu Chenglin was wearing a hat. As it turned out, when Gu Chongqing went up to the arena and continuously beat down Tang Ming's men, his guards had sensed that something wasn't right. They hurried back to the manor to report to the old Marquis. Unfortunately, the old Marquis had gone out. Coincidentally, Qinghe Academy didn't have classes today. The two brothers were at home, so they rushed over to take a look first. The two of them rushed into the torture chamber and hugged the old Marquis' arms, one on the left and one on the right. Gu Chengfeng said, "Grandfather, big brother's injuries have just recovered. Don't hit him anymore." Gu Chenglin nodded and said, "That's right, grandfather. Big brother isn't made of iron." You've been beating him every 3 days and beating him every 5 days. How are you going to let Big Brother live? The old Marquis was unable to restrain his anger. Both of you get out of my way. Otherwise, I'll beat both of you as well. Let's beat him then. Gu Qingfeng knelt down beside Gu Changqing. Gu Qinglin shrunk his neck. He was a little scared, but seeing that both his brothers were kneeling, he gritted his teeth and also knelt down beside his big brother. It was he who held his head with his hands. My hair has just grown out. Grandfather, can you not hit my head? The old Marquis was speechless. In the end, the old Marquis chased Gu Qingfeng and Gu Qinglin out. Outside the torture chamber, the two of them listened to the sounds of the lashes landing on Gu Changqing's body. They were so anxious that they spun around on the spot. After some time, the door of the torture chamber finally opened. The old Marquis walked out with an ashen face. He still held the long whip in his hand. The veins on the back of his hand and on his forehead were bulging. It was clear that he had been serious just now. The two of them looked at the old Marquis hesitantly. The old Marquis didn't say a word and left with a sullen face. Only then did the two of them enter the torture chamber again. Gu Changqing lay on the straw mat, his body covered in whip marks. Big brother. Gu Qinglin's eyes were red. He rushed over and helped Gu Changqing up. Gu Qingfeng looked deeply at his big brother and said to his third brother, "Go to the carriage and bring the medicine for wounds from the secret compartment." "Okay," Gu Qinglin replied in a choked voice. He wiped his tears and went out. There was no third person in the room. Gu Qingfeng felt some movement outside the torture chamber. There was someone holding the door, but it wasn't too close. He helped Gu Changqing sit on the straw mat with his back against the cold wall. Actually, he and Gu Qinglin had heard everything grandfather and big brother said just now. Gu Qinglin had a simple personality and couldn't hear anything, but he felt that something was strange. Gu Qingfeng knelt down on one knee beside Gu Changqing and looked at Gu Changqing. "Big brother, you've changed. You weren't like this before. What happened between you and grandfather?" On the way here, he and Gu Qinglin had heard about what happened in the military camp. He thought that his big brother was venting for the Gu family army. Thus, even though he felt that his big brother was a bit impulsive, he didn't suspect him. On the contrary, he felt that the relationship between grandfather and big brother was a bit strange. Big brother used to be very respectful to grandfather. Whenever grandfather asked, he would tell him everything he knew. But recently, his big brother and grandfather were clearly less talkative. At first, he thought that his big brother had grown up and become more introverted. But today it clearly wasn't the case. Was it his imagination? He always felt that big brother had some complaints about grandfather. "Nothing," Gu Changqing said. Gu Qingfeng looked at him suspiciously. "Is there really nothing? Or are you complaining that grandfather has been gone for so many years and left us in the manor without caring about us?" Gu Changqing closed his eyes and said, "I already said there's nothing. You talk so much. Have you finished memorizing your books?" Gu Qingfeng choked. "Memorizing what books? He went to the academy to mess around, okay? He wasn't in the mood to study. But even though he wasn't in the mood, his homework wasn't bad. He was very smart. If he wasn't born in the Marquis household and didn't have to inherit the family business as the second son who wasn't given high hopes, perhaps he would study diligently and become an official. He couldn't help with his big brother's matter for now. After Gu Qinglin brought the medicine and applied it on his big brother, he and Gu Qinglin returned to the Marquis household. He finished the homework assigned by the teacher, and also finished Gu Qinglin's. He was about to rest when he saw a white pigeon land on his windowsill. This wasn't an ordinary white pigeon. His eyes moved and he walked over to pick up the white pigeon. He looked around and made sure that no one was around before he untied a note from the pigeon's leg. There was another mission tonight. After Gu Qinglin fell asleep, Gu Qingfeng changed into his night clothes and put on his mask. He quietly left the Marquis household. He received the mission through the Thousand Sound Pavilion. The carrier pigeon was placed there after he raised it. The Thousand Sound Pavilion didn't know his identity. The meeting place was a room on the second floor of the Thousand Sound Pavilion. The other party seemed to have been waiting for a long time. He wore a mask and the other party also wore a bamboo hat. Neither of them could see the other's appearance. I've heard so much about you. The other party held a folding fan and smiled at Gu Chengfeng. His voice sounded like he was 70 or 80 years old, but the hand holding the folding fan was unusually young. Gu Chengfeng had been on missions for a few years, and had seen all kinds of strange methods to hide one's identity. Changing one's voice was a small trick. Gu Chengfeng went straight to the point. Say it, what do you want? The other party smiled and first took out a purse from his chest and placed it on the table. He slowly pushed it in front of Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng opened the purse to take a look. Good guy, it was all gold. Gu Chengfeng pulled out the gold inside and suspiciously looked at the other party. It seems like it's a powerful treasure. The other party laughed. It's a person. My family's young master wants a person. In the middle of the night, to steal someone? Gu Chengfeng rubbed his chin. So much gold. It can't be that you want me to steal someone from the imperial palace, right? The other party's smile deepened. It's not that difficult. It's just a normal young master. Then is there a need for so much gold? Gu Chengfeng wasn't stupid. It's a bit expensive, the other party said, and took out a portrait from his wide sleeve. The moment he saw the portrait, Gu Chengfeng's expression froze. How could it be him? The other party smiled. He is someone from the Marquis Ding and Manor. I believe that with your skills, it won't be hard to find him. Gu Chengfeng's tone was normal as he said. What is there to steal from this person? You look like you can't even lift a finger. These words were completely illogical. Who would steal a young master to have him do heavy work? But the bamboo hat man did not investigate. He only smiled and said, My family's young master likes him. Originally, he only liked him a little. Now that he was injured and the price was heavy, he wants him even more. Otherwise, wouldn't he have lost an arm for nothing? Saying this, the bamboo hat man suddenly coughed and stopped. But in Gu Chengfeng's mind, two words almost instinctively popped out. Arm lost an arm. That person is. Gu Chengfeng suddenly opened his eyes wide and clenched his fists. The bamboo hat man looked at the money pouch in Gu Chengfeng's hand and smiled. This is only the down payment. After the matter is completed, you will pay 10 times the reward. This was the largest order Gu Chengfeng had received in the past few years. 10 times the reward, that was 1,000 taels. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved. But Gu Chengfeng was not perverted to the point of selling off someone from the Marquis Manor. He threw the money pouch on the table. I can't accept this order. And I promise you, no one in the capital can accept it. The bamboo hat man bared his teeth in melancholy. Is that so? Then that's really a pity. Can I ask why? This young master only steals things, not people. Goodbye. Gu Chengfeng said perfunctorily. He adjusted the mask on his face and left without looking back. After walking out of the Thousand Sound Pavilion, he stood in the cold wind and could not calm down for a long time. Was the financier Tang Ming? Tang Ming had taken a fancy to Gu Yan? Big brother cut off Tang Ming's arm because of this? Young master. While Gu Chengfeng was deep in thought, a clerk from the Thousand Sound Pavilion walked out and said to him, Just now, the pavilion master stopped another order and asked if you want to accept it. It's a calligraphy painting. This kind of work was not difficult for Gu Chengfeng. He was about to open his mouth to agree when he suddenly thought of something and fell silent. Young master? The clerk looked at him in confusion. Gu Chengfeng said, Forget it. I have something to do tonight. I won't accept the order. Clerk. Yes. Gu Chengfeng returned to the manor as quickly as possible. He stayed in his room without taking off his night clothes, and occasionally looked out the window. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no movement. He rubbed his chin. Not coming? Or, a flash of lightning flashed through his mind. His expression turned cold. He put on his mask, opened the door and walked out. In the dead of the night, the solemn general's manor was brightly lit. Tang Ming's arm had been cut off by Gu Changqing. Tang Yueshan had called over the best medical officers in the military camp. The medical officers spent a Herculean effort to stop Tang Ming's bleeding. What about the arm? Tang Yueshan asked, his veins bulging. Can my nephew's arm be reattached? The medical officers looked at each other. Medical Officer Wu, who was the leader, said in shame. In response to Lord Tang's words, "Please forgive us for our shallow medical skills. We are unable to treat your nephew's arm." Tang Yueshan said with a sullen face. "Why can't you treat it? Don't your medical books say something about grafting flowers on a tree?" Medical Officer Wu said. "It is indeed recorded in the ancient books. Unfortunately, no one has ever succeeded. It is said that there is a precedent in the Yan Kingdom, but that is just a rumor." Tang Yueshan would never go to the Yan Kingdom for a rumor. Even if he was willing, the Yan Kingdom was far away. It would be too late by the time he got there. Just as Tang Yueshan was in a terrible fix, another medical officer surnamed Jiang said, "Lord Tang, I know a medical hall." Tang Yueshan said excitedly, "Tell me, who is it?" Medical Officer Jiang said, "I wonder if Lord Tang has heard of the Miracle Hall." Tang Yueshan shook his head. "No." Medical Officer Jiang thought for a moment and said, "Then have you heard of the bellows incident in the Ministry of Works?" Tang Yueshan said in a low voice, "I have heard a little about it. What does it have to do with the Miracle Hall?" Imperial Physician Jiang said, "My lord, you may not know this, but the Miracle Hands Hall was one of the medical centers that were recruited by the Imperial Court to treat injuries. The medical skills of the doctors in the Miracle Hands Hall are far superior to other medical centers, and they have treated the most critically ill patients. Even a craftsman who almost died was saved." Tang Yueshan said hurriedly, "Then go and invite them here." At night, the steward of the Tang mansion came to the Miracle Hall. He entered the hall and shouted, "Call out the most skilled doctor here and ask him to come with me to the marshal's mansion immediately." The most skilled doctor in the Miracle Hall was Gu Jiao. Unfortunately, Gu Jiao was not here today. If it was in the past, shopkeeper Wang would have asked Dr. Song to go to the marshal's mansion. After all, they did not know who was the most skilled doctor. Dr. Song's medical skills were also very good. He was taught by Miss Gu. However, shopkeeper Wang could not stay calm when he heard the words, "Marshal's mansion." "May I ask, what illness is it?" he asked the steward. The steward did not hide it and said bluntly, "My young master's arm was cut off. Can it be cured?" Dr. Song could not cure it. Shopkeeper Wang was not sure if Miss Gu could cure it. After all, he had never seen Gu Jiao treat it. He hesitated for a moment and called Xiao Sanzi. "Go to Miss Gu's house." Xiao Sanzi went to Bai Shui Alley. The person who opened the door for him was Gu Xiaoshun. "Xiaoshun, is your sister here?" Xiao Sanzi asked. Gu Xiaoshun said, "My sister is next door. Why are you looking for her?" Xiao Sanzi nodded. Then I'll go next door to find her." Gu Jiao had just finished giving Gu Yan a drip. When she heard that Xiao Sanzi had come, she tidied up her things and tucked in Gu Yan's quilt. She put down the curtain and said, "Come in." "Yes." Xiao Sanzi walked in. He did not look around or ask anything. He was very polite. "Miss Gu, there is a guest in the clinic. He wants to ask you to go to the marshal's mansion. Can't Dr. Song go?" Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Sanzi said embarrassedly, "It's a patient from the marshal's mansion. I heard that his arm was cut off. Dr. Song does not know how to treat it." Gu Jiao's hand that was tidying up the curtain paused. "Marshal's mansion? Which marshal's mansion?" Xiao Sanzi said, "There is only one marshal's mansion in the capital. It was the original Tang mansion." He looked around and whispered, "Miss Gu, did you not hear the big news today?" "What news?" Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Sanzi said, "That something happened in the Tiger Mountain barracks. I heard that the nephew of the world's great marshal got into a fight with someone and was heavily injured. I didn't expect that his arm would be cut off. I don't know who is so daring. Who else could it be?" Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes slightly. A dark light flashed in her eyes. "Okay, I'll go." "That's great. Then I'll wait for you in the carriage," Xiao Sanzi said with a smile and slipped out in a flash. Gu Jiao smiled evilly. She took out her little notebook and wrote Tang Ming's name on it with a charcoal pencil. Gu Jiao carried a small basket on her back and sat in Xiao Sanzi's carriage to go to the Miracle Hall. When he saw that the visitor was a female physician, the Tang mansion's housekeeper looked at her with disdain. "Why is she a female physician? Xiao Sanzi refuted. She's the most skilled physician in the Miracle Hall. She's also the owner of the Miracle Hall. She's not a female physician. She's a female physician. She treated the emperor's illness? Humph. The Tang Mansion's housekeeper was still somewhat disdainful. Gu Jiao said calmly. If even I can't treat your young master's injury, then there's probably no physician in the world who can. Xiao Sanzi straightened his back. That's right. The Tang Mansion's housekeeper expected that a small clinic wouldn't have the guts to fool the marshal's mansion. After frowning, he brought Gu Jiao to the marshal's mansion. Tang Yueshan was unhappy to see that the visitor was a female physician. However, Dr. Jiang recognized Gu Jiao at a glance. This is the physician who was at the scene of the accident that day. Her medical skills are very good. She saved the most patients. Hearing Dr. Jiang's words, Tang Yueshan was slightly relieved. He glanced at Gu Jiao. Her face was damaged. However, she didn't show any signs of weakness. Instead, she was very calm and generous. However, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but the girl's eyes seemed to be a little excited. He must be overthinking. Why would she be excited about treating his nephew? She should be nervous. After all, he would be angry if she couldn't treat him. Tang Yueshan said seriously, "You should have heard about my nephew's condition from the housekeeper. Can you treat him?" "Yes," said Gu Jiao. Tang Yueshan was stunned. "So easy? Without hesitation?" "The consultation fee is not cheap," said Gu Jiao again. Tang Yueshan snorted. "As long as you can cure my nephew, I can pay you however much you want." Gu Jiao raised a finger. 5,000 taels. Hiss. Tang Yueshan gasped and gritted his teeth. "Fine. As long as you can cure him, forget 5,000 taels. Even 10,000 taels is not a problem." Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "Then 10,000 taels." Tang Yueshan looked deeply at Gu Jiao. "Come with me." Tang Yueshan brought Gu Jiao to Tang Ming's courtyard. The marshal's mansion was bigger than Marquis Ding An's mansion. The route was complicated. If someone didn't lead the way, even Gu Jiao, a secret agent from her previous life, couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't get lost. Along the way, Gu Jiao looked around. Tang Yueshan thought she had never been to such a big mansion before, and didn't say anything. As soon as they entered Tang Ming's room, the strong smell of blood hit their nostrils. Gu Jiao's expression didn't change. She went forward to examine Tang Ming's wound and said to Tang Yueshan, "I will operate on him in a while. You can wait outside." "No way," Tang Yueshan said coldly. "This marshal doesn't trust you. If you take advantage of this marshal's absence and do something to Ming, this marshal will regret it." This old man was quite cautious. Gu Jiao said, "Oh, as you wish." Tang Yueshan insisted on staying in the room. He saw Gu Jiao open a small medicine box and put on a pair of gloves for herself. She then took out a strange needle and inserted it into Tang Ming's arm. On the other end of the needle was a strange bottle of medicine. Gu Jiao began to stitch up Tang Ming's wound. The entire process was closely monitored by Tang Yueshan. Tang Yueshan wasn't like Gu Qingfeng, an inexperienced youth. He had been on the battlefield, stepped on bones, and dug up meat from piles of corpses to eat. He could completely withstand this kind of bloody scene. However, Gu Jiao's calmness surprised Tang Yueshan. He had killed before, so he wasn't afraid. How could a girl be so calm? It couldn't be that she had killed before. The operation went smoothly. "Can he still hold a sword in the future?" Tang Yueshan asked. Gu Jiao said, "I don't know. I only treat injuries, not martial arts." Tang Yueshan didn't have much hope in his heart. It wasn't easy to reattach this arm. If he really couldn't hold a sword, it didn't matter. He still had another arm. If worst came to worst, he could practice with his left hand from now on. Tang Yueshan asked the housekeeper to withdraw some money from the accounts room to Gu Jiao. After Gu Jiao took the money, she immediately left the marshal's mansion. However, she didn't go back. Instead, she changed into a small black outfit and put on a beautiful peacock plume mask. She quietly sneaked back to the marshal's mansion. She had memorized the way to the marshal's mansion. Tang Ming, she was here. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. After an entire day of chaos, The marshal's mansion finally returned to its usual tranquility. Tang Ming's condition was stable. Tang Yueshan felt relieved and returned to his own courtyard, leaving 2 shadow guards to guard it. The 2 shadow guards solemnly stood guard outside Tang Ming's door. Suddenly, a small black figure descended from the sky. With a whoosh, an anesthetic needle in each hand pierced into the bodies of the 2 shadow guards. The shadow guards' bodies went limp, and they fell to the ground. Gu Jiao pushed open the door and slowly walked in. A simple and elegant carriage passed over the cold doorsill. She came to Tang Ming's bedside and looked at him with interest, as if she was looking at a prey that was about to enter the net. The anesthetic Tang Ming had received during the operation was gradually wearing off. However, Gu Jiao had added some other things to it, so he shouldn't be able to move at this time. However, his sense of pain was more sensitive than ever. As expected, Tang Ming was starting to feel pain. The sword wounds on his body, and the wound on his arm all fought to wake him up. He opened his eyes with cold sweat. Then, he saw a small ghostly figure in front of the bed. The small figure was wearing a peacock plume mask. There was a strange and frightening feeling to it. Tang Ming jumped in fright. "Someone," he shouted loudly. However, he realized that he could only make gurgling sounds from his throat. The corners of Gu Jiao's lips curled up. Oh, the effects of the drug were pretty good. Even his vocal cords were numb. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/112538262. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 280. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. Gu Jiao looked at him with great interest. Her gaze lingered on him, as if she was comparing weights. "How could you have touched my younger brother? Was it this one?" Gu Jiao looked at his right hand. "Don't worry, she had just stitched up this arm. She won't remove it." Gu Jiao looked at his left hand again. Tang Ming's heart skipped a beat. In order to let him sleep peacefully, the room was lit with incense and the oil lamp was extinguished. However, the moonlight shone through the window lattice and spread all the way to his bed. The other party's back was against the light, but there was a strange light flashing in his dark eyes. Tang Ming felt that he might have seen a ghost. After all, the marshal's residence was heavily guarded. It was impossible for an assassin to sneak in. Even if they did, there were still secret guards left behind by his uncle standing outside the door. They couldn't have been taken care of as well. Was he really seeing a ghost? Or was he dreaming? Didn't they say that people couldn't feel pain in their dreams? He was going to die from the pain. The place where Gu Chongqing had cut him with his sword hurt, and the place where his arm had been connected hurt even more. It was as if someone had sprinkled salt and applied spicy oil. It was so painful that cold sweat broke out all over his body. What Tang Ming didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Gu Jiao took out a pair of gloves from her chest and flicked them lightly. Tang Ming's body instinctively trembled, and a strange chill surged up his spine. The mask only covered half of Gu Jiao's face. Tang Ming could see her delicate chin and slightly curled lips. Tang Ming didn't know whether this person was a man or a woman, but his smile made his scalp tingle. "What are you doing?" Gu Jiao's lips curled up evilly. She put on her gloves and gently tapped his left hand. The cold temperature of her fingertips passed through the gloves and onto Tang Ming's skin. Tang Ming shivered. The next second, Tang Ming felt the seemingly gentle fingers suddenly increase in strength. With a crack, his wrist was fractured. Under the effects of the medicine, Tang Ming felt as if he had been fiercely slashed by someone. He opened his mouth to shout, but he could only shout in his mind. Gu Jiao's fingertips traced along his broken wrist. Her movements were very gentle, and her eyes were filled with enjoyment, if one ignored the cracking sounds under her fingertips. Tang Ming was in so much pain that he almost fainted. What kind of pervert was this? He actually broke his arm inch by inch. This level of pain was enough to make an expert from the imperial palace faint, but Gu Jiao had given him a very expensive medicine. He would be able to stay awake and feel pain clearly. Tang Ming's entire face was contorted in pain. He looked at Gu Jiao with hatred. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you." "Oh." Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and lifted her hand from his shattered left arm. Tang Ming thought that his aura had scared off the other party, but unexpectedly, the other party suddenly pressed her hand on his left leg. Tang Ming panicked. What was this little pervert trying to do? "Let go of him. Don't touch his leg." Gu Jiao's lips curled up slightly. Her knuckles gently knocked on his knee. With a crack, his knee shattered. Tang Ming was in so much pain that tears were coming out. This state of being unable to do anything but lie on the bed and be at the mercy of others was much more tragic than Gu Yan's state back then. At least Gu Yan could still speak, but he couldn't even shout. Tang Ming finally knew fear. He was a martial arts practitioner, and his courage was much stronger than that of ordinary people. This was also why he could brace himself to fight with Gu Chongqing in the arena. He was afraid of Gu Chongqing's martial arts, but more than that, he was angry and jealous. He was jealous that Gu Chongqing was clearly 2 years younger than him, but had a stronger martial arts talent than him. However, the masked person in front of him gave him a completely different feeling. Whatever anger, whatever jealousy, whatever unwillingness and anger, they were all replaced by fear that came from the depths of his bones. He had finally surrendered. Big drops of tears fell from his eyes. He looked at her pleadingly, even forgetting to ask who she was and why she was treating him this way. He only begged her to let him go. Gu Jiao looked at him gently. "Then have you let my Ayin go?" Tang Ming's tears streamed down his face, and his whole body trembled. "I beg you, let me go, let me go." Gu Jiao's lips curled up. Her fingertips gently pressed on his other knee. With a crack, it shattered as well. Even with the effects of the medicine, Tang Ming still fainted from the pain. Gu Jiao wasn't in a hurry. She sat patiently at the head of the bed and waited. It didn't take long. After all, the medicine from the research institute was all good medicine. Tang Ming slowly woke up. His face was pale, and his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. He saw that the demon hadn't left yet, and his whole body started to tremble uncontrollably once again. He was no longer the mighty warrior of the grasslands. All of his courage and guts had been destroyed by the person in front of him. He looked at her timidly. Tears filled his eyes, and he was filled with fear and despair. Gu Jiao ignored his despair. She wasn't a good person. She had never been one. She was willing to go to hell after death and be hacked into pieces. However, she would take revenge for the hatred in this life. Gu Jiao smiled gently. "You can speak now." Tang Ming moved his mouth and let out a low, "Ah." He could finally speak, but it was very weak. Gu Jiao took out a syringe from her pocket. In the dark night, Tang Ming couldn't see what it was clearly. He could only vaguely feel a cold light flashing past. What are you going to do?" he asked fearfully. Gu Jiao's gaze fell on his waistband. Chemical castration. Tang Ming didn't understand what he meant by melt snow or not, but he understood the last 2 words. His expression suddenly changed. No? Oh, okay. Gu Jiao quietly put the syringe back into her pocket. The next second, she took out a scalpel and said naughtily, "Physical castration then." Tang Ming was speechless. Tang Yueshan went to sleep after returning to the courtyard. He had experienced a stressful day and was indeed exhausted. Not long after, he fell asleep. In the middle of the night, he was suddenly awakened by a nightmare and sat up. He must have forgotten to close the window. At this moment, the night wind blew open the window and made it creak and sway. Tang Yueshan couldn't remember what he had dreamed of. In short, his heart was beating very fast. He frowned and wanted to check on Tang Ming's condition. As soon as he lifted the blanket, he heard a shrill scream. The voice wasn't loud, and it sounded like it came through the heavy blanket. Tang Yueshan's hearing was excellent. Otherwise he wouldn't have heard it. Ming. His expression changed. He didn't even bother to put on his shoes and ran out barefooted. He quickly arrived at Tang Ming's courtyard and saw the two secret guards lying on the ground. His heart sank. Then he saw a small figure dashing out of Tang Ming's backyard. Guards. There's an assassin, he shouted. The guards patrolling nearby were alerted and rushed over. They looked in the direction Gu Jiao had gone and chased after her. Tang Yueshan ran into the house as fast as he could. When he saw Tang Ming lying in a pool of blood and dying, he let out a violent and heartbroken cry. Gu Jiao didn't know Qinggong and couldn't outrun this group of masters. Tang Yueshan woke up at the right time. If he woke up a little later, she would have succeeded. But one was still not bad. The moment Gu Jiao leaped onto the wall, the masters of the marshal's mansion drew their bows and shot a whole row of arrows at Gu Jiao. Just as Gu Jiao was about to be shot into a sieve, a dark shadow jumped up from outside the wall and grabbed Gu Jiao's waist. He used a dart to deflect the arrows and stopped Gu Jiao's body from landing lightly on the horse's back. Giddy up. He pulled on the reins and the horse galloped away. The horse galloped for dozens of miles in the dark night before stopping. At this time, they arrived at the shore of a lake. This was a lake for people to enjoy and play. The scenery was pleasant with green mountains and clear waters. During the day, people would ride pleasure boats or go boating on the lake. The blue waves rippled and the lake was beautiful. At this time, it was late at night. Other than a few empty pleasure boats that had long gone to sleep, there was nothing else. Under the towering sky, it seemed like there were only 2 people and 1 horse left. Did you shake them off? Gu Jiao sat in front of him and asked. Yes, I shook them off. He answered. They had already shaken them off, but for the sake of caution, they still ran a little more. Gu Jiao lifted her long legs and slid down from the saddle. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the moist lake breeze for a while. She asked him, Why are you here? Gu Qingfeng also dismounted and led the horse to the grass by the shore. He watched the horse graze as he answered, Yes, why am I here? I was just wandering around and bumped into you. Can't I? Oh. Gu Jiao replied with a no. She walked across the grass and sat down on a stone step by the shore. She picked up a broken tile and threw it toward the lake. The tile flew over the water 7 or 8 times before it fell into the water. Gu Jiao was not satisfied. She sighed. You've regressed. The corner of Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. With your thin arms, it's already amazing that you can fly 7 or 8 times, okay? Gu Qingfeng saw that the horse was eating happily and did not bother with it. He walked to Gu Jiao's side and also found a small tile, planning to show her the strength of a man. In the end, pa, 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 it fell into the water 3 times. Gu Qingfeng was embarrassed. Haha. Gu Jiao laughed. She had a strange sense of humor. When everyone was laughing, she might not find it funny, but sometimes a very small thing would make her laugh like a child. It was the first time Gu Qingfeng saw her laugh like this. Childish. Gu Qingfeng rolled his eyes and sat down on the step beside her. Gu Jiao picked up another tile and threw it into the water. Gu Qingfeng hesitated for a moment but still asked, Why didn't you look for me? Gu Jiao asked strangely, Why should I look for you? Gu Qingfeng snorted. Don't you like to exploit me? It's such a dangerous thing. Why didn't you exploit me? Gu Qingfeng was just casually muttering a few words, but after he finished, he suddenly fell silent. Because it was too dangerous, she didn't call him? So this girl actually had a little bit of conscience? Gu Jiao sighed. You're so weak, I was afraid that you would drag me down. Gu Qingfeng. So why was he almost touched? She was clearly a heartless little girl. Also, what did she mean by weak? If it wasn't for him just now, she would have been shot into a sieve. Gu Jiao continued to play with the tile. He could see that she was in a good mood, so she must have succeeded. He just didn't know what she did to that guy. While he was thinking, Gu Jiao suddenly threw a brocade pouch into the river. She threw it too quickly, so Gu Qingfeng did not see it clearly, but from the sound of it falling, it seemed that there was something in the pouch. What is that? Gu Qingfeng asked. You don't want to know, Gu Jiao said. Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng silently lit a candle for Tang Ming in his heart. Tang Ming deserved it. He could have provoked anyone, but why did he have to provoke her younger brother? She wasn't even this angry when he provoked her. At the mention of Tang Ming, Gu Qingfeng remembered something. Tonight, someone paid me a lot of money to kidnap Gu Yan. The backer seems to be Tang Ming. It's not him, Gu Jiao said without hesitation. How can you be so sure? Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao said, Tang Ming's injuries are serious and he's been receiving emergency treatment. He can't order anyone to do anything. Gu Qingfeng frowned. If it's not Tang Ming, then why do they have to act like it's Tang Ming? Are they trying to confuse the public? Or are they trying to use me to spread the news that Tang Ming is drooling over Gu Yan? Gu Jiao didn't say anything. As early as in her dream, when Royal Prince Anne's exam papers were switched, she faintly felt that there was an invisible power in the capital. In the past, that power had nothing to do with her, so she didn't pay it any attention. Now, however, it involved Gu Yan. Of course, this was only her guess. She didn't have any evidence to prove that this was the work of that power. Also, the other party might not be targeting Gu Yan. It was more like they were using Fei Shuang to ruin Tang Ming's reputation. Gu Yan would be implicated for no reason. The consequences of being implicated on a small scale would cause Gu Yan to be harmed, but this should not be within the scope of the other party's concern. On a large scale, it would increase the conflict between the Marshal's manor and Marquis Ding'an manor. Gu Qingfeng also thought of this point. The situation in the capital had always been very complicated, but recently, it seemed to have become even more complicated. However, the other party had missed one point. That was Fei Shuang knew Gu Yan. She would not spread the news of Tang Ming and Gu Yan. Gu Yan, is he all right? Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao paused, then said he's fine. He was just a bit frightened. Ah, girl. Gu Qingfeng thought of something and spoke again. Who exactly are you? Where did you come from? In any case, he did not believe that she was that little fool who had wandered among the commoners. Me. Gu Jiao rubbed the tile in her hand. It was rare that she did not avoid this topic. She pointed at the distant horizon. I came from there. There? Where? Gu Qingfeng followed the direction of her finger, and only saw a vast expanse of starlight. Gu Jiao gazed at the expanse of starlight. Very, very far away. I crossed time and space. I might have also crossed the universe. She had never said these words to anyone before. No one would believe her, and no one would understand. In reality, Gu Qingfeng did not understand either, but he believed her. Gu Qingfeng said, Then how did you come here? Gu Jiao held the tile in her hand, and did not continue to play with water. Instead, she placed her other hand behind her head and lay down on the green grass. I also want to know how I came here. She had considered this question more than once. Was her arrival a theology or a science? Was it her soul that had transmigrated? Or was it the small medicine box from an advanced civilization that had torn through time and space and brought her brainwaves here? Gu Qingfeng studied her expression, and found that she was indeed confused. He thought to himself that there was someone who did not know how she came here. Could it be that she had been knocked unconscious and left here? Gu Qingfeng did not know how to respond. He looked at Gu Jiao lying on the grass and leisurely looking at the stars and could not help but mutter, Is it that beautiful? What about you? Gu Jiao looked at the starry sky and spoke slowly. Gu Qingfeng was slightly stunned. What about me? Gu Jiao slowly exhaled. Why did I have to be a little thief? That's not a little thief. It's a great thief. The number one thief in the capital. Gu Qingfeng exploded. Little thief, little thief. How unpleasant it was to hear. Gu Jiao pouted. Then isn't that stealing? Gu Qingfeng. He actually could not refute. He raised his eyebrows in satisfaction, but when he turned his head and saw that Gu Jiao had been looking at the starry sky and had not witnessed his awesomeness, he instantly lost his excitement. I'm the second oldest. As he spoke, he also looked up at the starry sky. I have a powerful older brother who has high hopes since I was young. As for me, I only need to play casually. After all, I don't have to worry about food and clothing when I grow up. In the future, when I get a share of the family business, I won't be able to spend it all in my lifetime. When he said this, his eyes were a little lonely. What's wrong with that? Gu Jiao asked. Gu Qingfeng smiled bitterly. Yes, what was wrong with that? Being a little playboy in the capital, ignorant and incompetent, and not having to shoulder anything, was something that many people dreamed of, but he was unwilling to accept it. He also wanted his grandfather to treat him harshly for once. But when he and his older brother did something wrong at the same time, his grandfather would always punish his older brother, as if it did not matter what he did. He had also tried to wake up early to practice martial arts with his older brother, but when he was late, his grandfather would never get angry. When it rained, his grandmother would not even let him go, saying, "Grandma's darling, why do you have to suffer?" Can you understand the feeling of others never having expectations of you? I'm living like a piece of trash. Gu Qingfeng's own mood became gloomy as he spoke. But when he turned his head, he found that the little girl who was supposed to be lying next to him as a listener had disappeared. His eyebrows jumped and he looked around. He saw that Gu Jiao had gone to the side of the horse and was looking for something in the small cloth bag hanging on the saddle. So thirsty. She found a water bag, pulled out the cork, and gulped down 2 mouthfuls. Aya, why is it wine? Gu Qingfeng wanted to remind her, but who told her to move so quickly? But this was not hard liquor, it was Thousand Sound Pavilion's pear blossom wine, so she would not get drunk. Just as his thoughts turned, Gu Jiao's eyes rolled back, and she passed out with a thud. Gu Qingfeng. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. The streets were as silent as snow. A certain someone was drunk and refused to ride a horse, so Gu Qingfeng had no choice but to carry her all the way from the lake to Jade Water Alley. Gu Qingfeng was someone who knew Qinggong, but he could not carry someone for dozens of miles. No matter how strong his Qinggong was, he would not be able to bear it, okay? Not to mention, a certain someone was especially restless. Swish. A certain someone stretched out 2 hands and grabbed Gu Qingfeng's ears. I have a little donkey that I never ride one day. I rode it to the market on a whim, I had a little whip in my hand, I was very proud of it, giddy up, giddy up. Gu Qingfeng's ears were twisted out of shape. Ah! What kind of crazy person is this? Someone come and take her away. When Xiao Lulang heard the noise, he opened the door and came in front of the two. Gu Jiao had already pulled Gu Qingfeng's ears, and his hair was also twisted into a chicken's nest. Gu Qingfeng, who always cared about his image, and Fei Shuang, who even made a beautiful and coquettish mask, had never been in such a sorry state. Gu Qingfeng looked at Xiao Lulang, who suddenly appeared in front of him with an ashen face. Very good, someone saw him like this. Gu Qingfeng had stayed in the medical center for a long time, so Xiao Lulang knew him. He knew that he was the second young master of the Ho Fu, Gu Jiao's brother. Xiao Yulong's expression softened. You guys drank? He asked. Gu Qingfeng hurriedly said. No, she was the one who looked for water to drink, and mistakenly drank my pear blossom wine. She did not drink much, just a sip, who knew that her alcohol tolerance was so bad. Xiao Lulang looked at Gu Jiao, who was lying on Gu Qingfeng's back, and stretched out his arms. Give her to me. Gu Qingfeng looked at Xiao Lulang doubtfully. Can you do it? Xiao Liulong's mouth twitched, and said expressionlessly. My hand is not crippled. Gu Qingfeng looked at him again, and saw that he was not using crutches, so he must have specially come out to carry her back. Moreover, he was dressed properly, and his expression was sober. It did not seem like he was woken up from his sleep, but rather like he had been waiting for this girl. Gu Qingfeng hesitated but still gave Gu Jiao to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang would have a hard time walking without crutches, but he still tightly held Gu Jiao in his arms. Gu Qingfeng was curious whether Xiao Lulang would throw her down, and stared at him as he entered the room. The moment he crossed the threshold, Gu Jiao suddenly hugged Xiao Liulong's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Gu Qingfeng wanted to poke his own eyes out. Why was he waiting here to watch? Was he looking for trouble? Xiao Lulang was actually also shocked by that kiss, but he knew that Gu Qingfeng had not gone far. He walked into the courtyard as usual, and put her on the bed in the east room. He looked at her with shining eyes. Do you know who I am? Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the bed, and opened a pair of watery eyes, and said very obediently, I know. She pretended to be awake, and looked very much like an innocent little deer. Xiao Luleng couldn't take it anymore, and his chest swelled. He took a deep breath, and asked her in a low voice. Then who am I? Gu Jiao. Husband. Xiao Luleng. Who is husband? Gu Jiao. Luleng Xiao Luleng. After she finished speaking, she fell asleep on the bed like a porcelain doll with her arms and legs spread out in front of her face. Xiao Luleng looked at her red little face, long eyelashes, and slightly open bright red lips. His Adam's apple moved and he quickly turned his face away. He stood up and was about to leave when Gu Jiao suddenly grabbed his sleeve, and in a daze he fell towards her. He used his other hand to support his body, and weakly pressed on top of her. Her face was very close, and the smell of the pear blossom wine lingered at the tip of his nose. Xiao Liulong's eyelashes trembled slightly. He didn't know when, but her clothes were crooked, and half of her exquisite collarbone was exposed. His eyes only lightly swept over it, and he felt a rush of blood to his head. His breathing quickened. Gu Jiao grabbed his clothes with 2 fingers, closed her eyes and muttered, I want a kiss. Kiss who? Jiao Jiao. Who wants to kiss Jiao Jiao? Luleng. Luleng wants to kiss Jiao Jiao. Xiao Luleng took a deep breath again, and raised his hand to cover her eyes that were about to open. He bent down, and just as his lips were about to touch hers, he paused, tilted his head, and gently kissed the corner of her lips. The news of Tang Ming's arm being chopped off by Gu Changqing spread like wildfire in the capital. However, there was no specific news of Tang Ming's abuse that night. They only knew that an assassin had come to the manor, and the streets and alleys were filled with wanted posters from the government. Unfortunately, the wanted posters didn't even have a face. They only described the assassin's approximate height and figure, and it was a man. Thus they couldn't find anything. After all, the assassin was a woman. No one suspected Gu Jiao. Of course, Tang Ming had suffered such a serious injury, but they didn't ask Gu Jiao to go to the marshal's manor to treat Tang Ming's injury. This wasn't strange. After all, Tang Ming's injury wasn't in the right place, and there were some things that outsiders couldn't know about. Tang Yueshan looked as if he had half his life taken away. In just one night, several strands of his hair had turned white. By the time the military camp's medical officer finished treating Tang Ming's injuries, it was already the morning of the next day. Tang Yueshan looked at Tang Ming, whose entire body was wrapped in bandages, and the blood vessels in his eyes looked like they were about to burst. Don't worry, Ming. I'll find the murderer and avenge you, Tang Yueshan said coldly. He stroked Tang Ming's forehead lovingly, and went to the military camp with a fierce look on his face. After entering the military camp, he went straight to the torture chamber. He believed that Gu Changqing had something to do with last night's incident. He was in a fit of anger, and his anger had drowned out his rationality. He had forgotten that Gu Changqing's figure didn't actually look like an assassin's. The assassin was smaller than Gu Changqing, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that he had seen wrongly in his panic. He kicked open the door of the torture chamber and angrily grabbed Gu Changqing's collar, pulling him up from the straw mat. Was it you? Was it you last night? Gu Changqing wasn't affected by Tang Yueshan's anger. He looked at him calmly. Marshal, what are you talking about? Was it me? Tang Yueshan gritted his teeth. Don't play dumb with me. You broke into the marshal's residence last night and attacked Ming. It wasn't enough that you took his arm. You hurt him like that. Gu Changqing, you're so vicious. Gu Changqing looked at him coldly and didn't say anything else. There wasn't much hatred between Gu Changqing and Tang Yueshan. What happened to the Gu clan troops was caused by their different camps. It didn't have much to do with whether it was Tang Yueshan or not. The Gu clan troops might not have a good time if they fell into the hands of others. However, Gu Changqing and Tang Ming had an irreconcilable conflict. Tang Yueshan couldn't not protect Tang Ming, so he and Tang Yueshan had completely fallen out. Since that was the case, there was no need to pretend to be polite. The more nonchalant Gu Changqing was, the angrier Tang Yueshan became. You don't want to admit it? Fine, then don't blame me for being unreasonable. Guards, bring me the torture instruments. What is Lord Tang doing? Marquis Xianpingho's unhurried voice slowly sounded outside the torture chamber. He was a person who didn't even go to the morning court, But he got up early for Gu Changqing. He was so sleepy. Marquis Xian Pingho yawned lazily, stood at the door, and looked inside with sleepy eyes. It's not good to do such a cruel thing so early in the morning, is it? Tang Yueshan looked at Marquis Xian Pingho with burning eyes. Xiaoji, you'd better not interfere in this matter. Marquis Xian Pingho was really sleepy. He raised his sleeve and yawned again. A beauty's yawn was also pleasing to the eye. He glanced at Tang Yueshan nonchalantly and said, Unfortunately, I like to meddle in other people's affairs. Especially since you've become the Grand Marshal of the world and taken away my military power. No matter how I think about it, I'm not happy about it. Well, I have to interfere. Tang Yueshan was speechless. Tang Yueshan suppressed his anger and said, Do you think you can interfere? I'm the Marshal of the world who was personally appointed by the Empress Dowager. In the military camp, there are only official positions, no marquis. My official position is higher than yours. What right do you have to interfere in my affairs? Marquis Xian Pingho was silent, as if he was seriously thinking about Tang Yueshan's words. Well. He nodded and crooked his finger at Changjing. Changjing walked over and asked Marquis Xian Pingho, Do you want to fight? Marquis Xian Pingho frowned reproachfully and clicked his tongue at Changjing. He said to Changjing indifferently, How can you fight so easily? Where did you learn it from? Is this what this marquis usually taught you? As he reprimanded Changjing, he reached into the small pouch at her waist and took out 2 marbles. He then turned to Tang Yueshan and said, Official Tang, how about this marquis make a bet with you? If you win, you can do whatever you want with Commandant Gu. If you lose, you won't torture Commandant Gu. Tang Yueshan said sarcastically, Oh, you're so cunning. Who wants to bet with you? Marquis Xian Pingho sighed. Hey, how can you say that? You and I have known each other for so many years. Even if we're not brothers, we're comrades. Why would I cheat you? I guarantee fairness. Unless you don't dare to bet. Tang Yueshan said coldly, Don't try to provoke me. Marquis Xian Pingho said, And my identity? Tang Yueshan was stunned. Marquis Xian Pingho looked at the marbles in his hand and smiled faintly. If I lose, I won't be Xiaoji anymore. This was a great temptation. Although he was now the Marshal of the world, his reputation in the capital was still not as good as Marquis Xian Pingho. But if Marquis Xian Pingho was no longer Marquis Xian Pingho, would he still be qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tang Yueshan? Marquis Xian Pingho said earnestly, Anyway, you won't lose anything if you lose. Are you stupid not to bet? Tang Yueshan loosened his big fist and let go of Gu Changqing. Okay, what do you want to bet? Digression. At the end of the month, the tickets were cleared. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/112509891. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 281. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find on the internet. Tang Yueshan calculated Marquis Xianping's strength in his mind. To be honest, he didn't fight with Marquis Xianping that many times. Even if he did, it was 20 years ago. Marquis Xianping's martial arts were slightly better than his, but Marquis Xianping's waist injury had not been completely healed. It would hurt every rainy day. Tang Yueshan was confident that Marquis Xianping was no match for him in martial arts. Was it a competition? Then Marquis Xianping was even less of a match for him. Although Tang Yueshan didn't know much about martial arts, he was still better than Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping was an ignorant and incompetent hooligan. Marquis Xianping sighed and said awkwardly. Lord Tang, you should know that I was injured before. Can I find someone to fight for me? It seemed that Marquis Xianping was really going to compete with him. Tang Yueshan glanced at the boy behind Marquis Xianping. He knew the boy. His name was Changjing, a shadow guard. Tang Yueshan didn't know much about his background. Tang Yueshan couldn't feel the boy's aura at all. There were two possibilities. One was that the boy didn't know martial arts, and the other was that the boy's martial arts were better than his. There was no doubt that the boy was not the first. It was strange, but also not strange. It was not strange because Tang Yueshan was a man who led troops to war. He learned how to defend the enemy on the battlefield. His martial arts were very good, but not as good as a shadow guard. The strange thing was that the boy was so mysterious that no one in the capital had investigated his background. Tang Yueshan cared a lot about his reputation, but he was not the kind of person who would suffer for it. Provocation might work on him, but the real reason why he agreed to the bet was his own selfishness. He wanted to remove Xiaoji's identity as Marquis Xianping. Therefore, he wouldn't let Changjing fight for Marquis Xianping just to save face, even if Marquis Xianping would say that he had an unfair advantage because of his waist injury. I don't agree, Tang Yueshan said seriously. Sure enough, Marquis Xianping said. You're bullying me because of my waist injury? Aren't you afraid that people will laugh at you? Tang Yueshan snorted coldly. If you can afford it, then go. If you can't, then leave. Bet. Of course I have to bet. Am I the kind of person who can't afford to gamble? Marquis Xianping's shamelessness was well known in the circle. Even Tang Yueshan was afraid of losing, but Marquis Xianping was not. He was thick-skinned. Therefore, he could afford to gamble and he could afford to lose. In a way, this was Marquis Xianping's unique reputation. Tang Yueshan was not afraid that he would go back on his word. All right, let's play then. Xianping Ho opened his palm, revealing 2 jadeite marbles. Pick one. Tang Yueshan was taken aback. What? Marquis Xianping said. Playing marbles. Tang Yueshan choked. You mean this? That's right. Marquis Xianping said matter-of-factly. What else do you think we're fighting? Fight. Tang Yueshan clenched his fists. He was so angry that the corners of his mouth were twitching. He was the one who said that if he could afford to gamble, then he could leave. Now he could not go back on his word. After all, it was not a matter of shame. He could not go back on his word. Tang Yueshan sucked in a breath of cold air. He had never thought that he would have to compete with others in this aspect at his age. Was there really nothing wrong with Marquis Xianping's brain? Did he really think that this was the case? Didn't he find it embarrassing? Sure, you used to play with marbles when Tang Yueshan was young, and he was good at it. Besides, martial artists were fast and accurate. Tang Yueshan was not afraid. Fine. I'll take this one. He answered impatiently and picked one of the marbles. Changjing's marbles looked similar, but each one was different. For example, Tang Yueshan's marbles were blue and white jadeite, while Marquis Xianping's marbles were jade and white jadeite. Marquis Xianping asked his men to dig 2 small holes in the ground. He and Tang Yueshan each took one. There were many ways to play with marbles. He asked Tang Yueshan to pick one, and Tang Yueshan picked the one that did not need to be done first. In addition to the marbles in their hands, they each took 10 marbles. Whoever hit the 10 marbles into the hole first would win. It sounded simple. However, he felt like an idiot to squat down in front of so many subordinates. Marquis Xianping was a handsome idiot. Everything he did was pleasing to the eye. Tang Yueshan could not bear to look at him squatting there. Tang Yueshan suddenly regretted. Why did he bet with this lunatic? Did he forget that this lunatic had never done anything normal? Marquis Xianping squatted on the ground and turned to look at Tang Yueshan. Are you ready, Lord Tang? At this moment, many people heard about the competition outside the torture chamber and came to watch. But just for this. Tang Yueshan was so embarrassed that he yelled in a bluff. What are you looking at? Don't you need to practice? The crowd left in a panic. Only the 2 lunatics. No, the 2 magnates, their henchmen, and Gu Changqing were left. Gu Changqing was not interested in this. He sat on the straw mat in the torture chamber with his back against the wall, and closed his eyes to rest. Tang Yueshan cursed Marquis Xianping thousands of times in his heart. Then, accompanied by the sound of a gong, the day's marbles competition began. Tang Yueshan was full of confidence because Marquis Xianping had not practiced martial arts for a long time after his waist injury. He practiced day and night, so his control was better than Marquis Xianping. However, Marquis Xianping pressed Tang Yueshan's face to the ground and rubbed it. Before Tang Yueshan could throw a single marble, Marquis Xianping's 10 marbles all went into the hole. That's right, Marquis Xianping defeated 10 marbles with 1 marble. His technique was so decisive that he could be called a god. Tang Yueshan was stunned. You don't usually train but play marbles, do you? Marquis Xianping groaned and struggled to stand up. He looked down at the stunned Tang Yueshan and said, "You lost, Lord Tang." In order to trick Chongjing into being his secret guard, he had practiced for a long time. If Tang Yueshan did not realize that he had been set up by Marquis Xianping, he would not be able to explain himself. But it was useless even if he realized it. He had already said the ugly words. Could he go back on his words? At this moment, a servant of the marshal's office hurried over and whispered something in his ear. Tang Yueshan stood up and looked coldly at Marquis Xianping and Gu Chongqing in the torture room. He said disdainfully, "Humph, I'll let you go today. But you hurt Ming. I won't let you go." After that, he threw away the marbles in his hand and walked away with a determined look. Marquis Xianping asked someone to pick up the marbles, wipe them for Chongjing and return them to him. Chongjing was a little depressed. He didn't like others touching his marbles. Marquis Xianping straightened his clothes and coaxed, "I'll buy you new ones next time. The round and beautiful ones, okay?" Chongjing's face darkened and his eyes were full of resentment. "You've said that 37 times. Marquis Xianping was embarrassed. "Ahem, did I? I'll buy them this time. I'll definitely buy them." Chongjing lowered his head and carefully wiped his marbles. Marquis Xianping came to the door of the torture room and looked at Gu Chongqing, who had his eyes slightly closed as if he didn't care about life and death. He said, "You're so young. What's there to be depressed about?" Gu Chongqing slowly opened his eyes and looked at the dark and obscure wall with traces of damp water. "I'm not depressed." Marquis Xianping stopped here and didn't argue with him. He said, "If you have difficulties, you can go to the emperor and say it." Gu Chongqing calmly said, "I have no difficulties." Not having any difficulties was the greatest difficulty, because it was simply impossible to say it out loud. Marquis Xianping saw through but didn't expose him. He smiled faintly. "All right, the matter has been taken care of. I should return to the Fu to catch up on my sleep. See you later." Gu Chongqing bowed slightly as a greeting. Marquis Xianping yawned and boarded the carriage. Chongjing sat on the outer seat and drove the carriage. Marquis Xianping knew where the carriage was going even with his eyes closed. He lazily said, "Go to the soft fragrance pavilion." Having been woken up from his sleep, he wouldn't be able to sleep soundly when he returned to the Fu. It wasn't bad to lie down in his arms. Chongjing didn't like that kind of place. There were many women and they always made strange sounds. However, Miss Xiang of the soft fragrance pavilion could make a lot of delicious food. On the other side, Tang Yueshan hurried back to the marshal's manor. "Where's the young master? Is he really awake?" he asked the housekeeper waiting at the door as he got off the carriage. The housekeeper hurriedly said, "Yes, he really did wake up. I remembered your orders to immediately inform you when the young master woke up." After what happened last night, Tang Yueshan didn't feel safe leaving Tang Ming alone in the courtyard. He ordered people to move Tang Ming to his own courtyard. At this moment, Tang Ming was lying in his room, sleeping on his bed. The room was filled with a thick medicinal fragrance, suppressing the smell of blood on Tang Ming's body. However, Tang Yueshan could still smell it. He frowned and came to the bed. Dr. Jiang and Dr. Wu were both there. The two of them bowed to him. "Lord Tang." Tang Yueshan waved his hand, gesturing for them to dispense with the formalities. He sat down on the edge of the bed and looked worriedly at Tang Ming. Tang Ming's brows were tightly knitted, his eyes were tightly shut, and his face was pale. He asked, "Didn't you say he was awake?" Dr. Wu said, "He woke up for a while, took 2 sips of medicine, then went back to sleep. In fact, he only took one sip and spilled half of it. Tang Ming's face was paler than when Tang Yueshan left in the morning. His breathing was also very weak. Tang Yueshan felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He took a handkerchief from a servant girl and wiped off the cold sweat on Tang Ming's forehead from the pain, even though he was unconscious. Then he asked the two doctors, Can he be saved? The two doctors looked at each other and pushed each other with their eyes. In the end, Dr. Jiang coughed softly and said, "We will do our best." "I don't want you to do your best. It's you who can cure him. I only have one." Tang Yueshan paused and clenched his fists. He endured the pain and said, "Nephew, I don't have a son. He is my heir. I won't allow anything to happen to him, whether it's his life or his." Tang Yueshan paused and glanced at a certain part of Tang Ming's body. Can he lift it again? He was not a scholar, so he couldn't say something polite and subtle. Lift it again was the most elegant word he could come up with in front of the doctors. The two doctors didn't know how to answer for a while. After all, they really couldn't say for sure. Tang Ming had lost a sack, so it was reasonable to say that he hadn't completely become a father-in-law. However, he was so badly injured that he couldn't be compared with a normal man. Tang Yueshan was furious that the doctors didn't give him a definite answer. Just as the doctors were about to start trembling in fear, a servant reported that Madame Tang had arrived. Tang Yueshan's anger disappeared, and he restrained his murderous aura. "You can leave now." Yes. The doctors were relieved and secretly thought that Madame Tang had come at the right time. Madame Tang entered the room with red and swollen eyes. The bad news made her cry so hard that she almost fainted in the morning. Tang Yueshan's eyes fell on her red eyes. His eyes moved, and he got up to give up the position beside the bed and slightly bowed. Madame Tang saluted him without looking at him. The distance between the two of them was very obvious. "Pour a cup of tea for Madame Tang." Tang Yueshan ordered the servant. The servant said, "Yes." "No need." Madame Tang choked and refused. She touched Tang Ming's face and tears came out again. "My poor child." Tang Yueshan stared at Madame Tang's side face and said solemnly, "Don't worry, sister-in-law. I will cure Ming." Madame Tang covered her mouth and nodded with tears in her eyes. Madame Tang sat for a while. The doctor still had to give Tang Ming medicine. She didn't want to delay her son's treatment, so she got up and left. Perhaps she had been crying for too long. The moment she stood up, she felt dizzy. She shook her head and staggered a few steps. Tang Yueshan's expression changed, and he went forward to support her. His eyes were full of nervousness. "Sister-in-law." Madame Tang was supported, and the dizziness quickly passed. She looked at the hand holding her arm, and her expression changed. She quickly pulled her arm away. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112483067. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 282. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Tang Yueshan seemed to realize that he had lost his composure and took a step back. "Take care, sister-in-law. If he wakes up tomorrow, I'll have someone inform you." "Thank you." Madame Tang nodded slightly and walked out of the room with the help of a servant girl. After that, the medical officer continued to treat Tang Ming, and Tang Yueshan returned to the barracks to interrogate Gu Chongqing. Marquis Xianping had people in the barracks. He couldn't have lost the bet in the morning and broken his promise in the afternoon. He didn't torture Gu Chongqing, but used the worst interrogation environment. Gu Chongqing was brought to a dark room that was specially used to interrogate soldiers who had committed serious crimes. Cold torture instruments hung on the walls. Perhaps it had been baptized by too much blood, but even though they had been wiped clean, it was difficult to hide the nauseating smell of blood. Do you admit to your crime? I broke Tang Ming's arm. I admit to it. The assassination in the middle of the night? No. No matter how Tang Yueshan interrogated him, Gu Chongqing always said the same thing. He had clearly been severely injured by the old marquis, but his mind was still clear. This made Tang Yueshan very angry. Gu Chongqing admitting to breaking Tang Ming's arm was enough to convict Gu Chongqing, but this was not what Tang Yueshan wanted. Tang Ming was half a cripple. No matter whether the assassin that night was Gu Chongqing or not, everything had started because of Gu Chongqing. If Gu Chongqing hadn't injured Tang Ming, how could Tang Ming not even be able to defeat an assassin? How could he have fallen into such a vicious trap? Gu Chongqing would have to pay the price for this, a huge price. Clearwater Alley. After being in a coma for 3 days, Gu Yan finally woke up. Yaoshi was watching over him. She sat on a chair beside the bed and fell asleep with her head leaning against the bedpost. She was pregnant, so it was easy for her to get sleepy. She had been staying by Gu Yan's side for the past few days, so she fell asleep without paying attention. Gu Jiao had just changed Gu Yan's foredrip. She turned her head and saw him open his eyes. She said softly, "You're awake? How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Gu Yan shook his head. He didn't feel uncomfortable, but his body was a little weak. He turned his head to look at the house and asked, "Where is this?" "Son-in-law this way," Gu Jiao said. When she had just brought Gu Yan back, Gu Yan's condition was a little too horrible to look at. For the sake of not provoking Yaoshi, she had him stay here. After Yaoshi found out, she did not move him. With regards to Yaoshi, Gu Jiao naturally could not tell her the entire truth. She only knew that Gu Yan had gone to buy something and fainted because he lost his way. Gu Yan had heart problems. This kind of situation had happened before, so Yaoshi did not suspect anything. She only felt very sorry for Gu Yan, and was very worried about Gu Yan. Gu Yan turned his head and saw Yaoshi sleeping soundly. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask something, but he heard Gu Jiao say, "I didn't say anything." It was a simple 3 words that came out of nowhere, but Gu Yan understood. Perhaps this was the tacit understanding between the twins. Gu Yan relaxed and asked, "How long have I been asleep?" Gu Jiao touched his forehead and said, 3 days. Then, Gu Yan's eyes flashed with something, but he hesitated. Gu Jiao slowed down the drip. "I'll go make you something to eat. How about millet congee and egg drop soup?" "Both are good." Gu Yan lowered his eyes and said. Gu Jiao nodded and turned to leave. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned her face slightly. She looked to the side and said, "That bastard has already been taken care of. Don't be afraid. He won't hurt you again. You can be at ease and boldly walk into the sunlight." Gu Yan gave a muffled grunt of acknowledgement. Gu Jiao was not in a rush to immediately have her younger brother become lively again. Some wounds needed time to heal. What Gu Jiao did not know was that the first thing that Gu Yan cared about after waking up was not Tang Ming's disgusting actions. He would care about those things, and it would take a long time for him to erase them from his heart. But now was not the time. Right now, his mind was filled with a name that he had heard from Tang Ming before he had fainted. Gu Chongqing. As the young master of the Marquis Fu, he was naturally not unfamiliar with this name. He was actually Gu Chongqing. He thought of those unbearable memories from his childhood. Because of his weak body, he only learned to walk when he was 2 years old. He only learned to run when he was 3 years old. One day, he took advantage of his afternoon nap to quietly climb out of bed and go to the Marquis Fu's little garden. At that time, there was a boy in black clothes practicing his sword in the garden. The boy was not even 10 years old, but he was taller than a 10-year-old child. He waved a long sword that did not match his body shape. He was full of righteousness and had a valiant and formidable bearing. That was his older brother. He knew. When the boy put away his sword, he ran over. "Older brother, I'm Gu Yan. You can call me Yin or you can call me Ayen. And mother called me Bao Bao." If you like, you can call me that too. He saw that he was sweating profusely, and even pulled off the small pouch around his neck and handed it to him. Here. The other party did not take it. He looked at him with a cold gaze. I'm not your older brother, and you're not my younger brother. He did not understand that gaze at that time. He only felt a little hurt. But after he grew up and carefully thought about it, it was not a wound. It was the pain of a knife cutting through his tender little heart. You are my older brother. You are my father's son, and I am also my father's son. But you are not my mother's son. We can never be brothers. The 3-year-old him was abandoned in the cold wind like that. It was probably really painful, so much so that he could still remember it. But did he give up? He did not. He did not understand why his father was his older brother's father, but his mother was not his older brother's mother. He went to ask his father. His father said, "Of course he is your older brother, and you are also his younger brother." Oh, he knew it. He was very happy. But when he turned his head, he saw his father rushing to his older brother's courtyard. He pulled out his older brother who was practicing calligraphy and gave him a good beating. Who allowed you to bully your younger brother? If you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll break your legs. No, don't break his older brother's legs. He hurriedly ran over and hugged his father's thigh, telling him not to hit him. Don't hit older brother, don't hit, don't hit. His father carried him away. He looked at his older brother who was kneeling on the ground with a face full of anger and humiliation. He came to find him. He roared at him and said, "Don't come find me again. I hate you when I see you. I hate you. I wish there was no such thing as you in this family." He actually wanted to tell him, "Older brother, second brother, and third brother hit me. They bruised my arm. It hurt so much." But at that moment, he felt that his heart hurt more than his arm. He thought that he was different from his 2 brothers. He had seen him touch the little rabbit on the ground, and he had also seen him save the little bird on the tree. He was such a kind person. He even liked little birds. He was so cute he would definitely like him too. But he did not like him. He hated him. He wished that he had never existed. He held his own heart and sincerely worshipped it to him. In return, he threw it away like it was a pair of worn-out shoes. But even so, when he was locked up in the dark room by his third brother, his heart still longed for him. He hoped that just once, he could come and protect him. He was his most respected older brother. Later he left. He stepped on the carriage to the mountain villa. From time to time, he would look back. At that time, he thought that if his older brother could come out and see him, he would not feel wronged. He would not leave. He was not afraid of being bullied by his third and second brother. But he did not come. He finally fell into his mother's arms and burst into tears. He had been in the villa for 10 years, but he did not wait for him to come visit even once. He finally forced himself to accept reality bit by bit. He was not his younger brother, and he was not his older brother. They had the same father, but they would never have any relationship. The memories in his mind surged. Guyan closed his eyes. In the dead of night, the moon was bright and the stars were few. The entire army camp fell into silence. Gu Chongqing sat on the straw mat, not feeling sleepy. Suddenly, there was movement outside the door, followed by the sound of 2 bodies falling to the ground. Gu Chongqing's eyes turned cold, and a vigilant light flashed through his eyes. In the next second, the door to the torture room was opened. More than 10 cold hidden weapons shot towards his head and face. This was the rhythm of shooting him into a sieve. Gu Chongqing suddenly rolled on the ground and grabbed the straw mat by the wall. He waved his arm towards the hidden weapons. Using the soft to conquer the hard, he took down the hidden weapons. Then the straw mat scattered and the hidden weapons shot back at the other party. The other party seemed to have been prepared. He did not rush into the torture room. The moment the hidden weapons shot back, he quickly hid behind the wall. The hidden weapons were nailed to the ground outside the torture room. Only then did the other party enter the room with a sword to assassinate Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing's hands and feet were shackled with iron chains. He raised his hands and used the iron chains between the shackles to seize the other party's sword. Holding the sword in his hand, he fiercely stabbed the other party's heart. It was true that he was injured, but in terms of skill, he was still much stronger than the other party. The masked man in black was almost stabbed by Gu Changqing. He hurriedly retreated from the torture room. The shackles on Gu Changqing's feet were tied to the iron rings on the wall. He could not get out. The man in black stood outside the danger zone. He crossed his arms and laughed without restraint. I didn't expect you to be so good at fighting even when injured. You are indeed the cold-faced Yama, Commandant Gu. Who are you? Gu Changqing asked coldly. The man in black smiled slightly. I'm the one who came to kill you. Someone paid for your life. But it seems that I underestimated your strength. I won't be able to kill you tonight. I can only settle for the next best thing, which is to kill your brother. Gu Changqing frowned. The man in black said slowly. The patron said that he had to take one of your brother's lives. Otherwise, it would be difficult to vent the hatred in his heart. Hatred in his heart. Gu Chengfeng and Gu Qinglin did not have any bad blood with anyone. Could it be? Gu Changqing's heart sank. He wanted to ask more, but the other party had already used Qinggong and disappeared into the boundless night. Gu Changqing thought back to the other party's mask. The mask was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. The hidden weapons on the ground also gave off an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The other party could have really gone to kill Gu Yan, or it could have been fake. Gu Changqing's eyes darkened. He did not hesitate for too long. He raised the long sword in his hand and cut off the iron chains on his hands and feet. He walked out of the torture room. At this moment, a soldier who had come to relieve the guard arrived outside the torture room. He saw Gu Changqing holding a sword and wearing shackles that had been broken. He then looked at the two corpses on the ground. The corpses' blood flowed all over the ground. Gu Changqing's sword was dripping with blood. His expression changed. Commandant Gu. Gu Changqing frowned but did not explain. He threw away his sword, thought for a moment, and knocked the other party out with a palm strike. Actually, there was no need. The other party was too shocked and completely forgot to stop him. However, if he did not knock the other party out, the other party would be guilty of dereliction of duty. Gu Changqing went to the stable to get his horse and rushed to Chang and Main Street. Along the way, he paid attention to whether or not he was being followed. After confirming that there was no one, he turned into Jadewater Alley. He went straight to the old chancellor's place. He rushed into Gu Yan's room. Gu Yan was soaking his feet in the medicinal concoction that Gu Jiao had boiled. Yao Shi was accompanying him at the side. The two of them were stunned when they saw Gu Changqing enter the room, travel-worn. Gu Changqing probably did not know how many days he had been locked up in the torture room, and how terrible his appearance was. His clothes were still stained with blood. The corner of his mouth had been accidentally whipped and was still bruised. He had not shaved for a few days, so there was a faint bruise around his lips. However, his eyes were so bright in the dark night that it was threatening. Gu Jiao had told Yao Shi and the family that Gu Yan had lost his way and fainted. Therefore, Yao Shi did not know that her son had met Tang Ming, and had already found out from Tang Ming that he was Gu Changqing. Yao Shi still thought that they were getting along like before. Yao Shi stood up and said, "You're here to see Yan'er, right?" Actually, she wanted to ask what was wrong with Gu Changqing, but it was not good to ask. "I'm going to see if the medicine is ready," Yao Shi said and went out. When Gu Changqing saw Gu Yan's current appearance, how could he not understand? However, he did not regret it. On the contrary, he let out a sigh of relief. He was very glad that the other party was scheming against him, and did not really want to harm Gu Yan. "Are you feeling better?" Gu Yan lowered his eyes and did not speak. After experiencing such a thing, anyone would be in low spirits. His reaction was not strange in Gu Changqing's eyes. Gu Changqing thought of that day when Tang Ming called his name. At that time, Gu Yan seemed to have fainted. He should not have heard it, right? Gu Changqing gathered his courage and walked to the bedside. As usual, he reached out to touch his forehead. He was worried that the shackles would be exposed, so he covered them with his sleeve. However, just as he was about to touch Gu Yan tilted his head. It was unknown if it was intentional or not. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112479535. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 283. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Chongqing's hand fell on empty air, and it froze beside his temple for a long time. Gu Yan didn't say a word or look at him. It wasn't hard to feel Gu Yan's resistance. However, Gu Chongqing wasn't sure if this resistance was only directed at him or at all men. After all, he had been disgusted by Tang Ming, so it was normal for him to reject other people's touch. As Gu Chongqing thought about it, he put down his hand that was frozen in midair. He stared at Gu Yan with a gentleness that even he didn't notice. "When did you wake up?" "This morning," Gu Yan said in a low voice. His eyes were lowered, and his tone was a little distant. His appearance made Gu Chongqing's heart ache. He hated himself for not cutting off one more of Tang Ming's arms. A strand of black hair hung down from his temples and fell on his thin cheeks. Gu Chongqing instinctively raised his hand, wanting to brush away the disobedient strand of hair. However, before he could touch it, he remembered his current condition and silently put his hand down. "I just came to see you," he said carefully. He didn't dare to get too close to Gu Yan. On one hand, he was afraid that he would accidentally awaken Gu Yan's bad memories. On the other hand, he couldn't explain it clearly himself. It was as if Gu Yan was different from before. Their relationship had also imperceptibly changed. He didn't want to think too deeply about it, so he could only use Tang Ming as an excuse and think that everything was because of Tang Ming. Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Yan steadily. "It's getting late. You should rest early. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first." After saying that, he stood up and was about to leave, but his steps paused. His gaze fell on the medicine bucket that was no longer hot, and he bent down. However, Gu Yan said, "No need. I still want to soak in it for a while." "Okay," Gu Chongqing responded. He put the towel in his hand back on the medicine bucket and said to him, "Then I'll leave." Gu Yan remained silent. Other than when Gu Chongqing entered the room, Gu Yan didn't know who it was. He raised his head and glanced at Gu Chongqing. After that, Gu Chongqing left. Gu Yan didn't look at him again. He heard Gu Chongqing come out of the house. However, he did not know if it was an illusion, but he also heard the sound of iron chains. The iron chain on Gu Chongqing's feet was completely cut off, but there was still a small piece of chain on his hand. When he went out, it accidentally fell out of his sleeve and collided with the shackles. Gu Chongqing hurriedly pressed down on the iron chain and turned back to look at the house, as if he was looking at Gu Yan through the heavy curtain of night. After a moment, he retracted his gaze and mounted his horse. He spurred his horse back to the barracks. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the camp, a large group of soldiers who were ready to go surrounded them. Leading them was Deputy General Hu. The soldier who had been knocked unconscious by Gu Chongqing had already woken up and was standing beside Deputy General Hu. "Ah, Lord Hu, it's Commandant Gu." This soldier discovered Gu Chongqing and pulled out the sword at his waist. Although he was afraid, he still resolutely stood in front of Deputy General Hu. "He's the one who killed Little Zheng and Lu Yi. He even knocked this subordinate out." He looked at Gu Chongqing with eyes full of loathing and vigilance. He was completely unaware that if Gu Chongqing had not deliberately knocked him out, he would have been charged with dereliction of duty just because he had stood there in a daze. Gu Chongqing was just like this. He did the best things, but bore the worst reputation. He never explained, nor did he ever clarify. Deputy General Hu looked at Gu Chongqing with a complicated expression. "Seize Commandant Gu." Everyone swarmed forward and surrounded Gu Chongqing. However, with the deterrence of the cold-faced Yama, no one dared to be the first to charge forward and capture him. Gu Chongqing dismounted from his horse. Everyone pointed their spears at him, but they couldn't help but retreat in unison. Gu Chongqing slowly stretched out his hands and surrendered. Only then did everyone muster up the courage to step forward with the shackles. They looked at him fearfully, then braced themselves to take off his old shackles and replace them with 2 new ones. Deputy General Hu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Take him back to the torture room. Tomorrow, Lord Tang will deal with him." It rained heavily all night until dawn. Because of the rain, the ground was wet. Little Jing Kong went out and fell again. Gu Jiao picked him up, wiped his little hands, changed his clothes, and sent him to school. Hanlin Academy was on duty very early. Xiao Lulang left before dawn. After Gu Jiao sent little Jing Kong to the Imperial College, she turned around and went to the medical center. The second boss was instructing his subordinates to move boxes of medicine onto the carriage. Gu Jiao looked at it and asked, "Where are you sending it to?" The second boss said, "Little Gu, I haven't seen you for a few days. Is everything okay at home?" Gu Jiao didn't come to the medical center for a few days. She said that her family was a little busy. She didn't explain the details, so the second boss tactfully didn't ask. "Yes, everything is fine." Gu Jiao nodded. The second boss was relieved and said, "These are the new batch of medicine for wounds. They are to be sent to the Hushan barracks. I will ask Dr. Song and Xiao Sanzi to send them over later. I'll go," Gu Jiao said. The second boss frowned. "You go? It just rained last night, so it's not easy to travel. I'm afraid that the carriage will slip." "I'll go." Gu Jiao's attitude was very firm. The second boss knew her temperament. Once she made up her mind, even 8 horses couldn't pull her back. Moreover, it was just sending medicine. He just asked Xiao Sanzi to drive the carriage slower. "Then don't worry." Also, as if he thought of something, he reminded her in a small voice, "Something has happened in the Hushan barracks in the past few days. Tang Daren's nephew was injured. Be careful when you send the medicine. Don't offend anyone." "I know," Gu Jiao agreed. After the goods were packed, Gu Jiao and Xiao Sanzi went to the Hushan barracks. It had rained last night, so it wasn't too sunny today. The sky was gloomy and vultures circled overhead. When they were about to reach the Hushan barracks, Gu Jiao ran into Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng had also just arrived. He came down from the Marquis Ding and Manor's carriage. At this time, Gu Jiao was still sitting in the carriage, but he recognized Xiao Sanzi and asked, "Who was in the carriage?" Gu Jiao lifted the curtain. "It's you? Why did you also come?" Gu Chengfeng entered without being invited and got into Gu Jiao's carriage. He said to Xiao Sanzi, "Keep watch. If someone comes, call us." Xiao Sanzi was not in a rush to respond. Instead, he looked at Gu Jiao. Seeing Gu Jiao give a slight nod, he jumped out of the carriage and vigilantly stood guard for the two. This was the road leading to the Hushan barracks. 500 steps ahead was the barracks. It was within the barracks' sphere of influence. Normal people would not easily come here. If there were soldiers coming in and out of the barracks, there would not be many of them. Gu Chengfeng saw that it was safe and said to Gu Jiao, "Did you also hear about what happened last night? Eldest brother is really muddle-headed. How could he forcefully break out of prison in the middle of the night? Although he has not been convicted, he still has an official's position. He is also in the barracks. Privately escaping will be treated as a deserter. I really don't understand where he went in the middle of the night." At this point, Gu Chengfeng realized that Gu Jiao had not uttered a word. His gaze fell on Gu Jiao's small face, which did not show the slightest hint of surprise, and his eyes widened. "Do you know where Big Brother went last night?" Gu Jiao did not speak. Of course she knew. She came over to change Gu Yan's bandages. Just as she walked to the door, she saw Gu Chongqing urging his horse to leave in front of her. Gu Chongqing had already passed by, so he did not see her. Although there was no news outside, she had treated Tang Ming's injuries before. She guessed that Gu Chongqing was the one who injured him to this extent. She also guessed that Gu Chongqing might be locked up in the barracks for investigation. A person under investigation should not be able to leave the barracks without permission. She came today to see how Gu Changqing was doing. Big brother didn't go to Jade Water Alley, did he? Gu Qingfeng asked tentatively. Seeing Gu Jiao's tacit agreement, he stood up with a swish. Did he go to see Gu Yan? He stood up too quickly and forgot that he was in the medical center's carriage. It was not as tall as the Marquis Fu's carriage. His head hit the roof of the carriage and he gasped in pain. He screamed. He did not know if it was because of the pain or because he was mad that Big Brother went to see Gu Changqing. Are you done screaming? Gu Jiao looked at him indifferently. Gu Qingfeng snorted. How can I scream as loud as you? A certain someone has already forgotten about grabbing my ear and screaming crazily the whole way after sobering up. Gu Qingfeng sat down again. After venting his emotions, he was only left with confusion and dejection. You should know that Big Brother is locked up, right? Big Brother escaped from prison last night. His nature is equivalent to desertion and should be executed, not to mention that he killed someone. Gu Jiao frowned. He killed someone? Gu Qingfeng lowered his head and said sadly, he killed 2 soldiers guarding him. Last night, the news reached the Marquis Fu. Grandfather rushed over overnight and did not return this morning. I guess that things did not go well, so I wanted to come see Big Brother. I thought you knew. I did not know. Gu Jiao would never have expected that Gu Changqing would kill someone to escape from prison. This did not seem like something he would do. How could Gu Qingfeng not think so? He said. I do not believe that Big Brother would willfully kill the innocent. Grandfather also does not believe it. However, there are witnesses and evidence. It is said that someone personally saw Big Brother holding a bloody sword and standing next to 2 dead soldiers. However, Big Brother did not kill the soldier who witnessed it. If Big Brother was really so crazy as to willfully kill the innocent, why would he leave a witness? Gu Jiao was silent. Gu Qingfeng's analysis was very reasonable, but there needed to be people willing to believe it. Gu Changqing killed Tang Ming first and thoroughly offended Marshal Tang. Marshal Tang would not let go of this great opportunity to execute Gu Changqing. Gu Jiao said, let's see him first. Gu Qingfeng did not have any objections. All right, I will bring you in. Gu Qingfeng originally thought that since he was the young master of the Marquis Fu, bringing a servant girl into the barracks should not be a problem. If it really did not work, he could say that Gu Jiao was the daughter of the Marquis Fu. He should still have this bit of face. In the end, when they reached the entrance of the barracks, the 2 were stopped. The reason was that unrelated people were not allowed to enter. What do you mean by idlers? I am someone from the Marquis Ding and Fu. Gu Qingfeng was angry. However, the soldiers did not allow them to pass. This is the order of the world's great marshal. We cannot do anything about it. Gu Jiao slowly lifted the curtain and handed over a matching card. Here to deliver medicine. She pointed at Gu Qingfeng. This is a worker from our medical hall. Gu Qingfeng. When did I become a worker from a medical hall? The soldier took the matching card and examined it. He looked suspiciously at Gu Qingfeng. Are you the young master of the Marquis Fu or a worker from the medical hall? Gu Qingfeng stammered for a long time. Medical hall worker. The soldier returned the matching card to Gu Jiao. Don't stay too long. Come out after you finish delivering the medicine. All right. Gu Jiao took back the matching card. Gu Qingfeng was completely dumbfounded. What? These days, the title of the Marquis Fu's young master was not as useful as a worker from a medical hall. The 2 entered the military camp. The one who tested the medicine was still the same medical officer from last time. After dealing with the Miracle Hands Hall a few times, they were familiar with each other. In addition, the efficacy of the Miracle Hands Hall's medicine was better than normal medicine, so he was very polite to Gu Jiao. He knew that Gu Jiao was not someone who would cause trouble. When Gu Jiao went out, he thought that Gu Jiao was going out to get some fresh air, and did not stop her. Gu Qingfeng brought Gu Jiao to the torture room where Gu Changqing was locked up. Tang Yueshan had ordered that no one was allowed to visit Gu Changqing. However, the 2 were lucky today. The guard recognized Gu Jiao. Miss Gu. You know? Gu Qingfeng was shocked. We met once. Once, Gu Jiao came to the military camp to deliver medicine. Coincidentally, a soldier had fallen to the ground with abdominal pain. She treated him and did not charge him. Gu Jiao said, "I'll go in and see him. I'll be out in a while." Then, "Okay. Miss Gu, hurry up. My partner will come later. If he finds out that I let you go, he'll be in trouble." "Okay." Gu Jiao nodded. The guard sneakily opened the door for Gu Jiao. "Go ahead, Miss Gu." Gu Qingfeng thought to himself. The two of them entered the torture room. Gu Chongqing was alone with his back against the wall. He sat on a straw mat that emitted a moldy smell. The door of the torture room was opened and the glaring light shone in, but he did not even lift his eyelids. "Brother." When he heard Gu Jiao's voice, he turned his head with a sullen face. When he saw that Gu Jiao was there too, his face turned colder. "What are you doing here?" It had only been a few days since they last met, but Gu Chongqing looked so haggard that he seemed to be a different person. His cheeks were stained with blood, his lips were chapped, and his eyes were lifeless. Stubble had also grown around his lips. The faint green circles made Gu Qingfeng's heart ache. "You shouldn't have come. Hurry up and go back." Gu Chongqing forced himself to suppress the tumultuous emotions in his heart. He coldly turned his face away, not looking at Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng. The two of them naturally would not leave. Since they were already here, they had to get to the bottom of it. Gu Jiao knelt down on one knee beside him. She put the small basket on the ground and took out a water bag from it for him. "I'm not thirsty," Gu Chongqing said. Gu Jiao put the water bag on the straw mat beside him. "Why did you suddenly go and see Gu Yan? Who led you there?" She asked so directly that even Gu Chongqing was stunned. Gu Jiao said, "It's fine if you don't tell me. I'll investigate it myself." Gu Chongqing's heart tightened. He said, "Don't investigate it. Don't get involved." Gu Jiao looked at him and said, "Then tell me." Gu Chongqing hesitated for a long time. He closed his eyes and said slowly, "It's Fei Shuang." Cough. Gu Qingfeng choked. Fei. Fei Shuang? Gu Chongqing said, "That's right. I fought with him. I recognized the mask he wore, and the hidden weapon he used." Gu Qingfeng refuted, "It can't be him." "How do you know it's not him?" Gu Chongqing said. He suddenly realized something was not right. "You know Fei Shuang?" It was not strange that Gu Jiao knew. Gu Jiao had fought with Fei Shuang before. It was Gu Chongqing who told her that the person was Fei Shuang. However, Gu Qingfeng was always in the academy or the house of Ho. How could he know about the people in the Jianghu? I heard it from her. Gu Qingfeng decisively pushed the blame to Gu Jiao. At this point, Gu Chongqing realized that the two of them came together. Earlier in the house of Ho, Gu Jiao learned how to read from Gu Qingfeng, although it was actually blackmail. However, Gu Chongqing did not know that. Did his sister like her second brother more? Gu Qingfeng said, "Big brother, believe me. It's not Fei Shuang." Gu Chongqing said, "How can you be sure?" "It's still her." Gu Qingfeng continued to push the blame to Gu Jiao. "She said that she met Fei Shuang last night. She told me on the way here." Gu Jiao. How could he push the blame to her again and again? Gu Chongqing frowned and looked at Gu Jiao. "Fei Shuang came to find trouble with you again?" Gu Jiao's expression did not change. "No, it was just a coincidence. He was drunk. He was dead drunk." Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. "The person who fought with me last night did not have the smell of alcohol." Gu Chongqing thought about it carefully. The other party's movements did not seem like it. The reason why he recognized Fei Shuang was mainly because of the mask and the hidden weapons on the ground. Gu Qingfeng asked, "So big brother, you broke out of prison to kill Fei Shuang?" Gu Chongqing shook his head. "No, he told me that someone wanted to kill me. If he couldn't kill me, he would kill Yan. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart." Gu Qingfeng's heart ached. Did he break out of prison because he was worried about Gu Yan? Was Gu Yan that important? Who was the one who said that he did not recognize Gu Yan back then? But look at what he did now. For Gu Yan, he was willing to give up his life. Did he not know the consequences of rushing out like that? Or, did he not see that this was a trap set for him? No, how could he not see it? But he was not willing to take the risk. Gu Qingfeng's chest felt like it was suffocating a ball of fire. It burned his internal organs until they were in pain. He turned his head and ran out with red eyes. "Miss Gu, someone is coming," the soldier reminded. Gu Jiao left the water bag to Gu Changqing and came out of the torture room. Gu Qingfeng wiped his tears and walked forward angrily. "Ignore me. Gu Jiao, I don't want to talk to you either." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112455478. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 284. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. After walking for a long time, Gu Qingfeng suppressed the anger and jealousy in his heart, but he was still angry. Who is the one who stabbed him in the back? Not only did he plot against my brother, but he also framed me. This is too abominable. If I find him, I will tear him into pieces. This matter was indeed very strange. It was not strange to set a trap for Gu Changqing. After all, there were many people who wanted to kill Gu Changqing. But to pretend to be Fei Shuang and set a trap for Gu Changqing was somewhat thought-provoking. Did the other party unintentionally pretend to be Fei Shuang? Or did he know who Fei Shuang was and deliberately pretended to be Fei Shuang? Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng each had their own thoughts. Suddenly, a strong and tall figure walked towards them. Gu Qingfeng looked up and was instantly stunned. Grandfather. The old duke had just finished arguing with Tang Yueshan and was now angry. When he saw Gu Qingfeng with a little girl, he walked over with a cold face. When he came closer, he realized that it was the little doctor who treated the emperor's head injury on the street. The old duke did not have a good impression of the little doctor. She said that someone wanted to harm her, but she did not hand it over to the authorities. Instead, she punished herself. He wanted to arrest her, but she resisted, causing him to whip the emperor's head. "Why are you with the doctor?" the old duke asked Gu Qingfeng in a low voice. Gu Qingfeng opened his mouth. Only then did he remember that the two of them had probably never met before. He hesitated for a moment before introducing her. "Grandfather, she's Gu Yan's elder sister. The other is a fraternal twin." He then looked at Gu Jiao. "He's my grandfather and also your grandfather." Gu Jiao did not call him grandfather. The old duke's eyebrows furrowed. This girl was actually his granddaughter? The old marquis did not think that Gu Jiao had recognized him long ago. After all, in his impression, Gu Jiao had only met him once, and that time, neither the emperor nor Marquis Xianping had called him by name. But, since Gu Qingfeng had already introduced him, could it be that she didn't even know how to call him grandfather? After all, the old marquis didn't care about this granddaughter of his. He didn't have any expectations, so there wasn't much disappointment. If she didn't call him that, then so be it. He didn't care. "What are you doing in the barracks?" Old Marquis asked. "To deliver the medicine," Gu Jiao said. Yes, she was a doctor. If this granddaughter had grown up in the Marquis Fu, he definitely would not have allowed her to become a doctor. The old marquis was deeply troubled by Gu Changqing's matter, and did not have much time to spend on a granddaughter who was not even close to him. He said to Gu Qingfeng, "Who allowed you to come to the barracks? Without my orders, you are not allowed to come to the barracks again." "But, no buts." The old marquis forcefully stopped Gu Qingfeng's words. "Look at the situation now. Don't come here and make trouble. How did your talk with Marshal Tang go?" Gu Jiao suddenly asked. The meaning of her words was obvious. She knew about Gu Changqing's situation and she cared about it. The old marquis had always thought that this granddaughter of his had no contact with the marquis's estate, but now it seemed that this was not the case. She appeared with Gu Changqing and came to the barracks to deliver medicine on the day of Gu Changqing's accident. No matter how he looked at it, it was not a coincidence. Naturally, the old marquis would not stop her from interacting with her half-brothers, but the consequences of this matter were too serious. Even he could not intervene, let alone a girl. "This is not something you should concern yourself with," he said in a low voice. "After delivering the medicine, hurry back." He did not have time to deal with a girl. He had to find a way to stop Tang Yueshan as soon as possible, otherwise Gu Changqing would not be safe. "I'm at the Miracle Hall." Gu Jiao looked at his back and said, "If you need anything, come to me." Oh, what could a girl help with? She did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. The old marquis took Gu Qingfeng with him, and left without looking back. Gu Jiao waited for the medical officer to finish examining the wound medicine, and got into the carriage to leave. Perhaps it was because she slept too late last night. Gu Jiao fell asleep in the carriage. Then she had a dream. In the dream, the Gu family did not find the real murderer. Gu Changqing was forced into a desperate situation. There were witnesses and material evidence. Tang Yueshan ordered Gu Changqing to be punished by military law and beaten to death 3 days later. In order to prevent his brother from being executed, Gu Changqing resolutely went to the barracks and revealed his identity. He said that he was Flying Frost, that he killed the soldiers, and that Gu Changqing broke out of prison to catch him. As punishment for fighting with Tang Ming and cutting off one of his arms, Gu Changqing was beaten 100 times and stripped of his official position. He was then released. But no one expected that on the night Gu Changqing returned to the Marquis Manor, Tang Ming was killed. Tang Ming did not die earlier or later, but he was killed as soon as Gu Changqing was released. If it was a coincidence, it was too much of a coincidence. Regardless of whether others believed it or not, Tang Yueshan did not believe it. He was certain that Gu Changqing killed Tang Ming. Tang Yueshan, who had lost his mind, rushed into Marquis Ding An's manor and stabbed Gu Changqing in the chest with a sword. Gu Jiao woke up with a start. Everything in the dream was clearly visible. Even the blood that flowed out of Gu Changqing's heart seemed to still be warm, dripping onto her fingertips. The tragedy happened tonight. Afternoon. Tang Yueshan announced that Gu Changqing would be beaten to death 3 days later. In the afternoon, Gu Qingfeng went to the barracks to walk into a trap. That night, Tang Ming was assassinated. It was easy to prevent the tragedy from happening. As long as Gu Qingfeng did not go to the barracks to take the blame, Gu Changqing would not be released. Tang Ming's death could not be blamed on him. But there was a drawback to doing this. It was unknown whether the other party killed Tang Ming out of a personal grudge, or to frame Gu Changqing. If it was the former, then it was possible that he would still go to kill Tang Ming tonight. If it was the latter, if Gu Changqing did not come out, the murderer would not take action. If they did not take action, how could she catch the murderer? Xiao Sanzi, wait. Go back to the barracks. Ah. Oh. Gu Jiao returned to the barracks and met with Gu Changqing again. Did you tell them that the murderer might be Fei Shuang? Gu Changqing shook his head. Not yet. It was useless even if he said it. Without any evidence, anyone would think that he was making it up. Then did they guess it? Gu Jiao asked again. Gu Changqing thought about it and shook his head again. They did not fight with Fei Shuang. Just a few hidden weapons should not be enough to determine that someone was here, and it was Fei Shuang. Just as Gu Jiao guessed, the other party did not leave enough evidence. It was not to frame Fei Shuang, but to force Fei Shuang to come out herself. It seemed that the other party knew about the relationship between Fei Shuang and Gu Changqing, and was sure that Fei Shuang would take the blame for Gu Changqing. The other party's goal was not to kill Fei Shuang, but to make Gu Changqing walk out of the barracks. Then they would kill Tang Ming and frame Gu Changqing. But Gu Changqing had escaped from prison last night, so why didn't the murderer kill Tang Ming last night? If that was the case, wouldn't they have been able to frame him long ago? Gu Jiao touched her chin. Could it be that it was inconvenient for the murderer to take action last night? No matter what, Gu Changqing had to leave the barracks today and lure the murderer to kill Tang Ming according to the original plan. In principle, he could do it tomorrow or the day after, but since the murderer seemed to be in an inconvenient situation last night, Gu Jiao was worried that it would be inconvenient for him to do it tomorrow or the day after. Seriously, he was not even professional when he was a murderer. Afternoon, the events in Gu Jiao's dream happened. Tang Yueshan really did convict Gu Chongqing and announced that he would be flogged to death in the barracks 3 days later. Some people fought for Gu Chongqing, while others were extremely cold. The atmosphere in the Gu clan army was extremely cold. They all thought that Gu Chongqing had taught Tang Ming a lesson to stand up for them. But now Gu Chongqing was going to be executed for them. Boss, if he really dares to flog Commandant Gu to death, let's rebel. Yes, rebel. I've long disliked Tang Yueshan and his nephew. If I continue to work under them, I might as well cut off my balls. The Gu clan army was filled with righteous indignation. This was a scene that Gu Jiao did not see in her dream. But just as everyone was rubbing their palms together, flames suddenly appeared outside. Immediately after, someone ran and shouted, "Fire! Fire!" The fire was in the torture chamber. The soldiers rushed to put out the fire. The fire was put out, but Gu Chongqing was nowhere to be found. A soldier shouted, "This is bad." Gu Chongqing escaped. Everyone searched the barracks but did not find Gu Chongqing. If he had been burned to death, there should at least be a corpse. Could it have been burned to ashes? When Deputy General Hu learned of this, he immediately reported it to Tang Yueshan. Tang Yueshan was furious. "What are you all doing? You can't even keep an eye on a prisoner. Hurry up and search for this marshal. Even if you have to turn the capital upside down, you must find Gu Chongqing for this marshal." The moon was dark and the wind was strong. Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng wore night clothes and lay under the flowers outside Tang Ming's courtyard. They had been lying in ambush for a full 2 hours. Will it work or not? Will the murderer really come to assassinate Tang Ming? Gu Qingfeng asked. Yes, Gu Jiao said. Nothing had changed. Gu Chongqing had been sentenced to death and Gu Chongqing had left the barracks. The only difference was the way he left, but Gu Jiao did not think that this would affect the murderer's performance. Gu Qingfeng whispered, "It's almost midnight now. Other than seeing people from the Tang residence coming and going, we don't see a single shadow of the murderer." Yes, in the dream, Tang Ming had been killed before midnight. So it should be now. Why hadn't the murderer shown himself yet? Wait. People from the Tang residence came and went. Gu Jiao stood up. This is bad. The murderer is inside. He's from the Tang residence. Tang Ming deserved to die, but he could not die tonight. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/112452620. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 285. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. All the novels that can't be found online are available here. There was no light in the dark room, and the incense stove emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. Tang Ming was wrapped up like a dumpling, and he fell asleep in pain. He was completely unaware that a dark shadow was quietly approaching him. That dark shadow silently came to the bed and raised the dagger in his hand. The dagger flashed coldly and reflected in Tang Ming's eyes. Tang Ming opened his eyes in shock. Who is it? That person covered Tang Ming's mouth with one hand and held the dagger tightly with the other. He stabbed it viciously toward Tang Ming's stomach. Tang Ming struggled, but he was seriously injured. How could he have any strength left? Just as the dagger was about to stab into his body, the window was suddenly knocked open. A dart flew in and hit that person's wrist. That person's wrist was cut. In great pain, his fingers loosened, and the dagger fell to the ground. That person saw that the situation was not good and turned to run. Just as he pulled open the door, Gu Jiao blocked the door. He looked in horror at the black-clothed masked man who had appeared out of thin air. He turned and ran toward the window. Gu Qingfeng jumped in through the window again. He had nowhere to run. His body trembled. In a flash, he suddenly bent down, grabbed the dagger on the ground with his uninjured left hand, and slashed toward his own neck. "Ah, you want to kill yourself? It's not that easy." Gu Qingfeng threw another dart and deflected the dagger in his hand. Gu Qingfeng walked to the wall and pulled out his own darts one by one. He then came to the bed and hit Tang Ming's mute acupoint under his terrified gaze. "Listen carefully. Who is it that wants to kill you?" Gu Qingfeng had seen Tang Ming before. At that time, Tang Ming was still insufferably arrogant. But now he didn't have any arrogance at all. He was extremely terrified. Gu Qingfeng didn't bother with Tang Ming anymore. Instead, he slowly looked at the person who was captured alive. This person's attire was no different from the manservant of the Tang residence. When Gu Jiao had injured Tang Mingji, she had seen this person before. He was one of Tang Ming's servants. His name was Gu Jiao, but she wasn't sure. Gu Qingfeng kicked him to kneel on the ground. "Who sent you? Who are you?" the servant asked. "Oh, you still have the guts to ask who they are when you're about to die?" That was true. If he didn't have enough guts, he wouldn't have been able to murder Tang Ming. Gu Qingfeng cleared his throat and crossed his arms. He looked down at him and said, "We are the secret guards sent by the marshal to secretly protect young master." "Young master?" The servant smiled. "Master never calls him young master. He always asks us to call him young master." Each manor had their own custom and address. For example, Ding'an Manor was addressed as young master, causing Gu Qingfeng to use this when he opened his mouth. The corner of Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. Did it collapse so quickly? Could he let the number one bandit in the capital have a taste of being a secret guard? The servant said sarcastically, "No matter what you ask, the answer is always the same. If you want to kill me or cut me up, it's up to you. If I spit out half a word, then you have the ability." Gu Qingfeng's teeth ached. This was this father's first interrogation, yet he encountered such a hard nut to crack. "Can't you be a bit more reasonable?" Gu Jiao did not say anything. She walked directly in front of the servant and waved her hand. A syringe fell from her sleeve and stabbed into the other party's shoulder. "What is this?" Gu Qingfeng asked with wide eyes. "A hallucinogen." Gu Jiao said. There was something else added inside. It was something that the organizations in her previous life used to train agents or interrogate opponents. However, it was not effective on everyone. Some people's hallucinations were too strong and would not be able to communicate with the outside world. Like this, they would not be able to get anything out of them. However, the servant in front of her did not seem to have it that serious. His eyes became blurry, but he could still hear the voices of the two people. "Who told you to come?" Gu Jiao asked. Old master." The servant said with a dazed expression. Then he began to laugh foolishly. "It's that effective." Gu Qingfeng's phoenix eyes widened. Striking while the iron was hot, he asked, "Which old master?" The servant said, Old master." Who else could be called Old Yuan by the servant of the Tang Manor? Gu Qingfeng was stunned. Wasn't this Tang Ming old master Tang's biological son? How could a father lay his hands on his own son? Gu Qingfeng had deeply experienced his own father's bias. However, no matter how biased Marquis Gu was, he would never have any ill intentions towards his own son. As the saying went, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. Was old Master Tang crazy? He went to look at Tang Ming on the bed, and saw that he had fainted at some point. He probably did not hear the servant's words. Gu Jiao's reaction was calmer than Gu Qingfeng's. After all, she was someone who had died once, and her parents in her previous life were people who could push her to hell. She walked over and picked up the dagger on the ground. Gu Qingfeng was still in disbelief. Did he make a mistake? Or is there something wrong with your medicine? Gu Jiao said. There's nothing wrong with my medicine. He probably didn't make a mistake either. How could he make a mistake about this kind of thing? He was a servant in the manor. Old Master Tang was paralyzed in bed. He and Old Master Tang would definitely meet in Old Master Tang's room. Gu Qingfeng had exposed the truth with just the word, young master. It was clear that he was not someone who was easy to fool. Gu Qingfeng was confused. But why would Old Master Tang want to kill his own son? Who knows? Gu Jiao was not interested in the Tang family's internal strife. She was only concerned about where this dagger had come from. She remembered that in her dream, this was Gu Chongqing's dagger. Does this dagger look familiar to you? She handed the dagger to Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng took it and looked at it carefully. Aya, isn't this my eldest brother's dagger? Why is it here? Was he planning to use this dagger to assassinate Tang Ming? It was too scary. His eldest brother wasn't in the military camp, and his eldest brother's dagger had appeared at the crime scene. No matter how he looked at it, his eldest brother would never be able to clear his name. Who gave it to you? He asked the servant. The servant muttered. Old master, Gu Jiao said. Does your eldest brother often carry it with him? Gu Qingfeng shook his head. Not really. This dagger was given to him by grandfather on his 12th birthday. Eldest brother treasures it very much, and has always kept it in his study. He rarely uses it. Third brother and I would occasionally borrow it to play with. How do you remember that it was 12? Gu Jiao was purely curious. Because there is a birthday banquet at 12. Gu Qingfeng said. In Zhao country, not every birthday was celebrated grandly. Other than 1 year old, the next big birthday was 12 years old. The third was when women turned 15 and men turned 20. Gu Jiao made a no sound. The original owner of the body had not yet turned 12, so she did not remember this custom. Gu Jiao said. Old Master Tang has been paralyzed for many years. How did he get this dagger? It was not strange for him to be able to order a servant around, but to reach into Marquis Ding and Fu, he probably did not have the ability. You mean that there is someone else behind this? Gu Qingfeng frowned. Old Master Tang wanted to kill Tang Ming. Gu Qingfeng could not guess his motive, but someone was working with Old Master Tang to frame Gu Chongqing. This goal was very clear. Someone was deliberately trying to sow discord between Marquis Ding and Fu and the Marshal's Fu. Marquis Ding and Fu was the Emperor's left arm, and the Marshal's Fu was Empress Dowager Zhuang's right arm. In other words, someone wanted to see the Emperor and Empress Dowager kill each other. Gu Jiao found Tang Ming's dagger in the room and placed it in the servant's hand. Let's go. Gu Qingfeng looked at the servant and said. We're leaving just like this? What about him? Gu Jiao put away Gu Chongqing's dagger. The effects of the medicine will last for another 2 to 4 hours. Let Tang Yueshan find out for himself. Gu Qingfeng thought it was feasible and planned to leave with Gu Jiao. However, as soon as he opened the door, he quickly closed it again. He nervously said in a small voice, Someone is coming. Gu Jiao looked around. Go to the wardrobe. Tang Ming's wardrobe was large enough that it was not a problem for the two of them to squat in. The wardrobe had a pattern of openings. The two of them could see the situation inside the room from behind the openings. The person who came was Lady Tang. At this time it was very late. However, her son was seriously injured. As a mother, she could not sleep at night. It was normal for her to be unable to resist coming over to take a look. As soon as she entered the room, she saw a servant kneeling on the ground with a dazed expression. He was holding a dagger in his hand and was mumbling something that she did not know. Her expression changed. Her first reaction was to throw herself to the side of the bed to see if Tang Ming was okay. Tang Ming had already fainted and could not respond to her. However, Tang Yueshan, who had just returned to the mansion, heard her call and quickly rushed over. When he entered the room, Lady Tang had just taken the dagger from the servant's hand. Tang Yueshan saw that Lady Tang was holding a dagger, and his eyes trembled. He almost instinctively went to the side of the bed and blocked the unconscious Tang Ming. Ming-er is your son. What do you want to do? Gu Qingfeng frowned. Tang Yueshan's reaction was very strange. Other than Lady Tang, there were 2 other people in the room, Tang Ming and the servant. Lady Tang was holding a dagger in her hand. Even if Tang Yueshan suspected that she wanted to kill someone, why did he suspect that she wanted to kill his own son instead of the servant? Digression. Third watch. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Also, are there any guaranteed monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all the novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1124455513. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 286. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. After all, Mrs. Tang was just a housewife. She was not shrewd or scheming. Being doubted by Tang Yueshan, she felt wronged and couldn't help but argue. I didn't want to kill Ming, then this dagger. Tang Yueshan's eyes fell on the gleaming dagger in Mrs. Tang's hand, and suddenly realized something. He abruptly looked at the servant kneeling on the ground and kicked him. Bastard! Are you going to kill Ming, The servant was already unconscious. He fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. He just smiled foolishly and said, Kill haha. I killed the young master. The servant was the son of a servant in the mansion. Tang Ming asked him to serve him. He didn't expect that he would raise such a scourge. Who ordered you to kill the young master? Tang Yueshan said coldly. The medicine injected by Gu Jiao was still in effect. His consciousness was very weak. Basically, he would answer whatever was asked. He said blankly, Old master. Although Gu Chengfeng had already expected this result, he felt different when he heard it again. He wanted to know what Gu Jiao was thinking. He turned to look at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao's face was as calm as water. Does this girl even have a heart? Was she a living person? After Gu Chengfeng was done cursing in his mind, he focused his attention on Tang Yueshan and the others. The door was wide open. The moonlight and the candlelight came in together and lit up the room. After hearing the words old master, Tang Yueshan and Mrs. Tang's faces changed. Tang Yueshan was shocked and angry. Mrs. Tang was also surprised. There was a trace of anger, but it was soon covered by great sadness and guilt. Her body went limp and the dagger in her hand fell to the ground with a loud clang. The next second, she covered her face and knelt on the ground, sobbing painfully. He knows everything. Her whole body was trembling, and tears flowed out from between her fingers. Her suppressed voice hid endless pain. Tang Yueshan, who was in a state of great shock and anger, was stunned when he heard her cry. He suppressed the anger in his heart and slowly walked in front of Lady Tang. He knelt down on one knee, and his expression softened. When Gu Chengfeng saw this, he vaguely felt that something was strange. However, he had never experienced this kind of thing and had not heard much about it, so he did not react for the time being. Gu Jiao more or less understood. Tang Yueshan reached out his hand and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he put it down and gently patted her shoulder. Don't cry. Madame Tang cried even louder. She seemed to be crying out all the grievances she had suffered in her life. It's my fault. It's my fault. I don't have the face to live in this world. It's all my fault. Gu Chengfeng asked Gu Jiao with his eyes. What's going on? Gu Jiao. See for yourself. Gu Chengfeng. Fine, I'll look by myself. Petty. Madame Tang cried her heart out. She was heartbroken. Tang Yueshan showed a rare look of helplessness. He did not know how to comfort her. After a long while, he squeezed out a few words. It's not your fault. Madame Tang cried breathlessly. How is it not my fault? I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have. Shouldn't have what? Even on such a night, in such a scene where the scars were exposed, she still found it difficult to talk about what happened in the past. She married into the Tang family at the age of 16 and became a living widow at the age of 17. In the first year of their marriage, they had a period of enviable days. However, things did not go as she wished. Her husband fell off a horse and became paralyzed. 1 day or 2 was not a big deal, but 1 year, 2 years, she was a living person. She also needed to be comforted. She could not bear the loneliness. Tang Yueshan was more thick-skinned than she was. There were some things he could say. He sighed and said, "How can I blame you for what happened in the past? I forced you to do it." It was a long story. Once on the way home, he accidentally bumped into his eldest sister-in-law and a man watching an opera together. The two were acting intimately. It was obvious that something was wrong. At that time, he was also young and impetuous. He happened to be drinking with his colleagues. His mind was not so clear. He rushed over and beat the man. Then he asked his eldest sister-in-law why she betrayed his brother. She could not bear the loneliness? She liked to seduce men so much? She was so, in short, the bastard said a lot. He did not know whether it was his eldest sister-in-law's struggle that disturbed his mind or the strong liquor that destroyed his mind. When he came to his senses, the mistake was already made. After that, his eldest sister-in-law became pregnant. In order not to let his eldest brother find out, they gave him some medicine, saying that they wanted to leave him an heir. His eldest brother believed it. He really thought that his eldest sister-in-law was pregnant with his child. During her pregnancy, his eldest sister-in-law regretted it more than once and wanted to abort the child. Even after giving birth, she was very cold to the child. It was only when Ming slowly learned how to smile and call her mother that her heart softened. But after all, he had learned a lesson from the past. He was worried that his eldest sister-in-law would not want to see the child and would think that he was a bastard. So he took Ming to his courtyard. When did his eldest brother find out? Was it when he raped his eldest sister-in-law several times after Ming grew up? Tang Yueshan clenched his fists, stood up, and strode out the door. Mrs. Tang's face changed. She seemed to realize something. She rushed over and hugged Tang Yueshan's leg. "Don't kill him. Don't." Tang Yueshan clenched his fists. His eyes were blazing. "I admit that I've wronged him, but you've seen how I've treated him all these years. If he sends someone to kill me, I won't hold it against him. But he wants to kill Ming." Mrs. Tang cried and begged. I beg you, let him live. He is already living a life worse than death. Please don't kill him." Tang Yueshan sneered. "Ha, maybe he wants to die. Instead of living in pain, it is better to give him a quick death." Mrs. Tang hugged Tang Yueshan's leg tightly. Her tears fell on his clothes. "He is Ming's father. If you kill him, what will happen to Ming?" Tang Yueshan said coldly. "I am his father." Gu Chengfeng was so absorbed in listening that he did not notice that his hair tie had loosened. A strand of hair suddenly fell, brushing his face and scratching the tip of his nose. He felt itchy on the tip of his nose and could not help but shiver. Achoo! It was over. It was all over. Gu Chengfeng closed his eyes tightly. He wished he could become bald like Gu Chenglin. Tang Yueshan and Mrs. Tang were also startled by the sudden sneeze. Mrs. Tang's crying stopped abruptly. The servant was by the bed. The sneeze came from the wardrobe opposite. Mrs. Tang stood up. Her face was pale. Tang Yueshan stood in front of her and looked at the wardrobe vigilantly. "Who is it? Come out." There was no movement from the wardrobe. Tang Yueshan unleashed a gust of wind from his palm without hesitation. His powerful inner force swept toward the wardrobe like a raging wave. The moment the wardrobe door was smashed into pieces, several darts flew out at high speed. Using the cover of the darts, Gu Chengfeng pulled Gu Jiao out of the cupboard in a flash. He flashed out of the room. Tang Yueshan was slow to dodge the darts, but he still chased after them quickly. Although he was fast, he recognized that one of the men in black was the assassin who killed Ming that night. Tang Yueshan gritted his teeth. Well, I was looking for you. How dare you come into my room? If I don't catch you today, I will have wasted half my life on the battlefield." Tang Yueshan chased after them with the masters in his residence. Gu Qingfeng's lightness skill was not bad, but the masters in his residence were not weak either, especially when they brought archers. The cavalry of Marquis Xuanping's residence and the archers of the marshal's residence were famous in the 6 kingdoms. Rows of strong bows were drawn, and arrows came whistling down from the sky. The whole street was filled with a murderous rain of arrows. The two of them had to duck into an alley. With their backs against the wall and ears filled with the sound of arrows, Gu Qingfeng's heart was pounding. That's terrible. No wonder it was said that even the Yan Kingdom's army could not take down a city guarded by the Tang family's archers. They were too powerful. Whoosh! They had clearly dodged into the alley, but there was still an arrow that shot towards them as if it had grown eyes. The two of them backed away. The arrow nailed into the bluestone floor, 3 inches into the ground. The arrow's feather flashed. Even Gu Jiao, who had seen firearms, had to admit that the Tang family's archers were powerful. This was much more murderous than the night they chased after her. That night, Tang Yueshan probably wanted to catch her alive, so he did not use his full strength. Tonight, they heard the most unbearable secret of the Tang family. Tang Yueshan would never let them live to see tomorrow's sunrise. A guard rode his horse and chased into the alley. Gu Jiao shot him down from the horse's back with a silver needle. Then she mounted the horse. Gu Jiao also mounted the horse. He sat behind Gu Jiao. Coincidentally, Tang Yueshan arrived at the same time and launched another palm strike. Gu Jiao urged the horse to rush out, but she was too late. The aftershock of the internal energy hit Gu Qingfeng's back. Gu Qingfeng spat out a mouthful of blood. His face scrunched up in pain. Why did he have to ride with her? Wouldn't it be better to wait for the next horse? The horses in the marshal's residence were not bad. Except for Gu Chongqing's, this was the fastest horse Gu Jiao had ever ridden. The horse ran fast, but the way it moved was a bit strange. Gu Qingfeng looked at the curvy horse and asked suspiciously, "Do you know how to ride a horse?" Gu Jiao said honestly, "No." "What?" Gu Qingfeng was confused. Gu Qingfeng was about to die from the bumpy ride. He felt as if his internal organs were about to shift. Tang Yueshan's punch did not cause him too much internal injury, but this girl's ride on the horse was about to seriously injure him. After a while, Gu Qingfeng felt that the scenery was not right. "Where are we going?" "The palace," Gu Jiao said. Gu Qingfeng said, "Why are we going to the palace? Are you crazy? When we get to the palace, we won't be able to escape. Hey, can't you stop? Stop right now. Stop." Ah. This stupid girl. Gu Jiao had been to the palace several times, and each time she deliberately took a different route. She knew which was the shortest. However, Tang Yueshan had also thought of what she had thought. Moreover, Tang Yueshan was born and raised in the capital. No one knew the layout of the capital better than him. When they were about half a mile away from the palace, Tang Yueshan and his men caught up with Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng. Tang Yueshan quickly outflanked the two of them and the horse. The archers of the Tang residence were ready. They drew their bows to their fullest and knocked at least 3 arrows on each string. If the arrows were aimed at the two of them, they would be shot full of holes. Gu Jiao's horse stopped. Tang Yueshan rode on his tall and mighty steed and slowly walked towards Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng. He stopped about 10 steps away from them. He tightened his grip on the reins and looked at the two of them with disdain and hatred. "I'll give you a chance. Who sent you? Why did you hurt me? If you tell me the truth, I'll give you a quick death. You won't be able to live. You hurt someone you shouldn't have hurt, and hurt something you shouldn't have. The best I can do is to make sure you suffer less, so that you can die a quick death." Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. "Why don't you just die? You son of a B***tc. You have no regard for ethics. You and your sister-in-law." Bang. Tang Yueshan opened his palm. The force of his palm went through Gu Jiao and knocked Gu Qingfeng to the ground. Was he trying to hit a cow through a mountain? Gu Jiao estimated Tang Yueshan's strength in her mind and concluded that she was no match for him at the moment. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and took out a small notebook from her pocket. She wrote with a charcoal pencil, "Fine, I'll confess." Tang Yueshan thought, "Is she a little mute?" Gu Jiao scribbled 2 lines of words. Someone ordered us to come here. That person is... Gu Jiao's handwriting was crooked and Tang Yueshan struggled to read it. He couldn't help but lean forward to see whose name was at the end. Gu Jiao jumped up and held a scalpel in her hand. She rode on Tang Yueshan's horse and pressed the scalpel against Tang Yueshan's neck from behind. Great, he fell into her trap. Little mute, you've got some skills. But if you think you can control him like this, you're too naive. Tang Yueshan grabbed Gu Jiao's scalpel and threw Gu Jiao off the carriage, ignoring the risk of losing his hand. He jumped down from the air. Shoot, Gu Jiao asked. Aren't you afraid of being shot like a hedgehog? Tang Yueshan sneered. I'm wearing the golden silk armor. It's invulnerable. Gu Jiao thought, I'm sorry. I lost to the equipment. Thousands of arrows were about to be fired. The blood drained from Gu Qingfeng's face. At this moment, the palace gates suddenly opened. A heavy, ancient rumble could be heard, as if an emperor's door had opened in the dark night. The Empress Dowager has arrived. Digression, Empress Dowager. Do I have a monthly ticket? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. You can find all the novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_826/112429243. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 287. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. Why did the Empress Dowager leave the palace at this hour? Tang Yueshan had good hearing, but he doubted that he had heard it wrong. He glanced at the palace gate and saw the Empress Dowager's golden phoenix carriage dazzling in the dark night. All of you stop, he shouted. The archers hurriedly withdrew their bows. Tang Yueshan was not afraid that Gu Jiao would run away. If she dared to run, she would be offending the Empress Dowager and he would shoot her into a hedgehog. Tang Yueshan lifted his clothes and knelt in the direction of the Empress Dowager. As soon as he knelt, the guards and archers around him knelt as well. Gu Jiao came to Gu Qingfeng's side and knelt on one knee. She looked at Gu Qingfeng who was lying on the ground and pinched his wrist. She put 3 fingers on his pulse. Gu Qingfeng was in pain all over, but it was not a serious internal injury. Hitting a cow through a mountain had certain limitations, and was not very powerful. However, Gu Qingfeng was a little stunned and could not move at all. 8 strong eunuchs, all of whom were masters of the imperial palace, carried the wide Empress Dowager made of Phoebe Jinnan wood. Their breathing was steady. The South Sea shark gauze hanging from the canopy of the Empress Dowager was priceless and priceless. The gauze on all sides was rusted with different forms of golden phoenixes. The night wind blew the gauze and the golden phoenixes sparkled as if they were about to fly out at any time. Tang Yueshan was a decisive general, but at this moment he had to admit that Empress Dowager Zhuang was powerful. In this world, women had it harder than men. Women may have to work 10 times harder than men to achieve the same thing. Tang Yueshan would never underestimate this woman in the imperial harem. She could kill the former emperor, depose the former crown prince when he was childless, and still be the Empress Dowager when the new emperor was already an adult. How could she be weak? The Empress Dowager Zhuang stopped. She was closer than Tang Yueshan expected. Tang Yueshan was flattered and almost forgot that there were 2 assassins behind him. Greetings, Your Majesty. Tang Yueshan knelt and bowed. Why did Your Majesty leave the palace so late at night? Generally, Empress Dowager Zhuang would not go out of the palace. After all, the rules of the royal family were there. Although Empress Dowager Zhuang did many things that were against the rules, Empress Dowager Zhuang also knew what was important. She would try her best to put her rebellious behavior on things that she had to do, such as holding court behind the curtain. Behind the mermaid veil, Empress Dowager Zhuang's long and majestic voice sounded. Do I need to report to you what I do? Tang Yueshan was slightly taken aback. These words could be said to be unreasonable. In any case, he was a favored official of the Empress Dowager. Why did he feel that the Empress Dowager spoke to him with a sense of alienation and coldness? But thinking of Empress Dowager Zhuang's temperament, Tang Yueshan didn't take it to heart. I have overstepped. Please forgive me, Empress Dowager. He cupped his hands and bowed, waiting for Empress Dowager Zhuang to let him rise. However, Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't call him up. She just said lightly, You brought so many people to make a scene at the palace gate. Why? Are you trying to rebel? There was still a bit of distance from the palace gate. What's more, he brought the guards of his mansion, not the soldiers of the military camp. How could he rebel? Tang Yueshan reported. Empress Dowager, an assassin broke into the marshal's mansion tonight. I came here to catch the assassin. I hope Empress Dowager can understand. Empress Dowager Zhuang coldly interrupted him. Catch the assassin near the palace. You didn't come out to stop me. Are you going to break into the palace directly later? It turned out that the Empress Dowager left the palace to stop him. After the Empress Dowager promoted him to be the marshal, the relationship between the Empress Dowager and the Emperor became more and more tense. At this juncture, he couldn't be allowed to make any mistakes. Tang Yueshan cupped his hands and said, I was reckless. Please forgive me, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang said earnestly, Tonight, it was I who found you. I naturally believe in your loyalty. But if His Majesty finds out, it won't be something that can be settled with just a few words. I just promoted you. Don't make trouble for me. Tang Yueshan kowtowed and said, I know I'm wrong. Empress Dowager Zhuang said again, Well, since they are assassins, just deal with them. A long night is full of dreams, Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin stepped forward and said, I'm here. Empress Dowager Zhuang ordered, Drag the two assassins into the forest and deal with them. Do it cleanly. Yes. Eunuch Qin bowed and waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. He pointed to 4 bodyguards and said, Come with me. The bodyguards followed Eunuch Qin. They passed by Tang Yueshan and came to Gu Jiao and Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng covered his chest that was about to explode and said with difficulty, Wait, you can't kill us. What are you? Eunuch Qin pinched a handkerchief and blocked Gu Chengfeng's mouth. Gu Chengfeng was dragged into the forest not far away. Gu Jiao was also taken there. There was the sound of swords being unsheathed in the forest. Cold light flashed. The 2 assassins didn't even have time to scream before their throats were slit. After a short while, the 2 guards who were in charge of the execution came to report. Their swords were still dripping with blood, and the blood was still steaming. Although the trail was broken, it was not necessarily a bad thing. They would not have the chance to reveal his secret in front of the Empress Dowager. Do you have anything else? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked. Tang Yueshan hurriedly said, No, I'll take my leave. The assassins were dead. Now he could follow Gu Chongqing's trail without worry. In the forest, Gu Chengfeng saw Eunuch Qin take out 2 bottles and order 2 bodyguards to collect the chicken blood. Yes, he thought he was going to die. The bodyguards raised their swords and cut down 2 pheasants in the grass. Eunuch Qin said, Pheasant blood is very fresh. It's delicious to make duck blood curd. Gu Chengfeng was speechless. Is this the point? I was almost scared to death. You're telling me this? The Empress Dowager asked you to kill people. Is it okay for you to kill chickens? And you? He looked at Gu Jiao. I'm about to pee my pants. Is it okay for you to be so calm? Gu Chengfeng thought this was the biggest scare of the night. But what happened next made him kneel on the spot. Eunuch Qin took them to see the Empress Dowager. He thought that he could not hide the fact that he was the young master of the Marquis family. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor were not on good terms. She would not let him go easily. As soon as he thought about it, he saw a small black shadow flash by. It was running towards the Empress Dowager's phoenix carriage. Gu Chengfeng's hair stood on end. You don't assassinate the Empress Dowager. You can't assassinate her. You'll be stabbed into a hedgehog. Gu Qingfeng was injured and could not move. He could not stop it. He saw a small black figure rush into the Empress Dowager's phoenix carriage. He covered his eyes and could not bear to watch. However, he did not hear the bodyguards draw their swords for a long time. Instead, he heard the little girl call, "Great Aunt." The voice was clear and sweet, with a bit of cleverness and surprise. Gu Qingfeng suspected that he was hallucinating. He dared to remove the hand covering his eyes, and saw the girl sitting beside the majestic Empress Dowager behind the gauze curtain blown by the wind. The Empress Dowager was still sacred and unapproachable, but she raised her hand and took off Gu Jiao's mask. She held it in her hand and complained, "It's so ugly. Don't you know how to wear a nicer one?" "This one is nice," Gu Jiao said. "I like it." "Burn it." The Empress Dowager handed the peacock plume mask to Eunuch Qin. Eunuch Qin took it respectfully. It was not because it was ugly, but because Tang Yueshan saw it. It must be destroyed. Gu Jiao couldn't bear it. The Empress Dowager was not in a hurry to catch up with Gu Jiao. She looked at the dumbfounded Gu Qingfeng and asked, "Who is he?"